Hello, everyone, and welcome to the National Firewood Bank Summit. We're very excited to have you here this afternoon. We have a great agenda planned. We're very thankful for Elisa Shine, who organized everyone. We have many panelists who have put a lot of time and thought into their presentations, and we hope that this becomes a nice learning opportunity for everyone. I'm Jessica Leahy, and I'm a professor in the School of Forest Resources at the University of Maine. We have a lot of partners on this project here at the university. It's cooperative extension in the School of Forest Resources, but we have the Alliance for Green Heat, the USDA Forest Service, UMass Amherst, and other collaborators who we meet monthly. And part of that was identifying the need for a summit and bringing everyone together. To kick things off, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. That's something that we do here at the University of Maine. And we're thankful for the article that was published in a peer-reviewed journal article about wood banks. It included a land acknowledgement that could be applicable to all of us who are scattered throughout the United States. So we honor with gratitude the Indigenous peoples whose ancestral homelands all firewood banks occupy, and we will continue to work as allies towards Indigenous community access and self-determination in natural resource management on these lands. To continue the welcome and greetings, we've invited next to speak Brian from the USDA Forest Service.
So hi, everybody. I'm Brian Brash. I'm from the USDA Forest Service, and I've been helping lead this Firewood Bank initiative. We received funding in the bipartisan infrastructure law to support firewood banks, to provide financial and technical assistance for them. So first of all, I want to thank all of you who are here, who run firewood banks, who volunteer, who provide that critical service. And I'm glad that we're able to offer both technical assistance through this webinar, but also financial assistance as appropriate. So first of all, thanks to you who do the hard work in delivering firewood and supporting these firewood banks. Really appreciate the University of Maine for taking the leadership on today's workshop. I think that there's going to be a ton of great information and new updates, how to do this. What are the best practices? How do we learn from each other? And then, great appreciation for all of the other many partners that have been really part of these firewood banks, the Alliance for Green Heat, the University of Maine, the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. And, it's just a great partnership that we've been able to pull together and deliver. So thank you for joining us today. And, I appreciate the opportunity, and we'll pass this back to Jessica.
Yeah, so next, Elisa is going to go over the schedule because we are trying to make this really interactive and have breakout sessions. So that adds to the complication of the technology and our use of various Zoom links. So we're going to review our plan for today.
Good morning, everybody. One of the fun things about this summit is that as one of our registries told me yesterday, a lot of us are better with chainsaws than with laptops. So I hope that you will all have patience with me as I work through Zoom, and we can together deal with these quirks and enjoy this gathering today. So I'm Elisa Shine. I'm the outreach coordinator, as Jessica introduced me. And here is our summit schedule. So we're beginning with a welcome, that's now. We'll hear from the wood banks in two panels, one starting just after noon with Jessica facilitating. We'll hear from 3 wood banks and you'll get a chance to ask questions. And we'll hear some research updates from researchers in the field, and you'll have a chance to ask them questions as well. We'll take a little break from the computer, and then we'll break out into these 2 separate discussion sessions, which will be separate Zoom meetings. There'll be different links for each group, And you can decide which group you want to join. So we'll have regional discussions. You can self-segregate into the region that you identify with, and then topical discussions following that on the 3 topics that you can see on the schedule. So we'll provide you with links. The links are in the program that you should have received this morning or yesterday. So we'll help each other through that, I hope. We'll have another break, and then we'll have another panel with another 3 wood banks that you'll get a chance to ask questions of. An update from the Alliance for Green Heat about the rollout of the financial assistance program. And then we'll say farewell for this summit. So because we don't get a chance, there are so many people here. I'm so grateful for all the interest. We don't get a chance to introduce ourselves. So I've put together a little, probably incomplete, map of where we're all from. So we have participants, we have a great interest from the West. The darker the red, the more attendees we have from these states. But we have Alaska and Hawaii with us here today as well. And then a lot of states that we know we have to do more outreach, because I'm sure that there's firewood sharing going on. When you registered, you all gave a couple of words to describe your community, your wood bank, where you're from. And these were the words that you chose. I just loved some of the descriptions. One of my favorites was saws, splitters, service. So thank you for sharing those. So I'm going to, without further ado, we're going to get down to business here and talk wood banks. So I'll hand it back to Jessica.
And that's great. I had one follow-up question. Could you give us instructions for how to ask a question? Should we use the chat or the Q&A?
Absolutely, yeah. During the panelist discussions, the Q&A is a great tool to use. So please use those.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so we're going to jump into our first plenary. The idea here was to learn from other wood banks. We're trying to have a geographic spread and a diversity of wood banks, because one thing that we've learned as we look across the US at all the different wood banks is that there are so many ways to organize a wood bank, and hopefully that comes across. The idea with the first plenary is to look at strategic partnerships, volunteer recruitment. And so how do you find partners? How do you keep a team? And that will be the focus for sort of the first of the wood bank profiles. I'm going to have each of the 3 wood banks who are going to talk in this session. They'll introduce themselves and have a few minutes to share their information. Elisa will be the timekeeper. We met yesterday to go over the logistics of this and agreed that she would, I will be the good cop, she'll be the bad cop. So we're going to have Marshall from Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps talk first, then Jordan from Petersham Wood Banks, and then Ken from the Royal Order of the Red Suspenders. So Marshall, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Marshall Masaisva. My title is the Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps Wood for Life Project Manager, and that's housed under the larger nonprofit Conservation Legacy. I'm from the Hopi Reservation in Arizona, and my projects are typically in Arizona and Colorado as well. So typically working with the Coconino and the San Juan National Forests. We are a conservation corps by name, but the Ancestral Lands program, we just had our 15-year anniversary yesterday, so we're still celebrating that. But the Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps has kind of been developed and grown to be an Indigenous specific conservation corps. So we operate out of 6 offices: the Navajo office, which is in Gallup, Acoma, Zuni, and New Mexico; the Hopi office, as well as our Albuquerque and our individual placements, which are placed nationwide. So we're a very large conservation corps that's growing very quickly. But we got involved in the Wood for Life partnership on the Coconino back in 2019 and have been heavily involved since then. So the way that our wood bank operates is that we're an infield operation. So we field Conservation Corps crews from Ancestral Lands, Arizona Conservation Corps, as well as Southwest Conservation Corps up in Colorado. So anytime we'll have about 30 participants in the field. We've got a ton of equipment. But the way that we operate is that we've got a partnership agreement with the National Forest Foundation as well as the U.S. Forest Service. And then we're given a certain number of acres to develop a plan and implement a wood distribution and felling plan, treatment plan with the Forest Service guidance. And the specific design is built around trying to produce wood material from our site. So of course, firewood, post and pole, and also mulch. So we're a fairly large and effective organization, and we're growing very quickly. Again, as I said, we're starting to move operations up into the San Juan region too. So we're growing fairly quick.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, Jordan is up next. There, I see Jordan O'Connor, and probably just got promoted up from the as a panelist. So thank you, Jordan.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure how to change that, but my name is Jordan O'Connor. I'm the coordinator for the Peter Sam Community Wood Bank. Peter Sam, Central Massachusetts, heavily wooded, heavily rural. And it's kind of a little bit of an aging population because we have a lot of protected land and we don't have a lot of starter homes for young families. So we skew a little bit older than most. And we're also unique in our location by being right on top of the Quabbin Reservoir, which is a huge reservoir that 6 towns in the 30s were taken over, and it serves as the water source for Boston. So our wood bank is small, 18 cords per year. It is kind of on the honor system, half a cord per household per month, and we have a number of partners. We
Jordan,
Jordan will be rejoining us in a moment.
okay, great. Well, that's a perfect while Jordan is reconnecting. We have enabled the chat. So I believe those of you who noticed when you clicked on it, it said disabled. There's the Q&A, and we are monitoring that part. That is, you type in your question and then that's visible to the hosts and the panelists. But chat is enabled now. So I think you'll be able to use that to ask questions as well. And now we can even see Jordan. So that is excellent. I'll hand it back to you.
The day is brighter. So we had Clarice, we have DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation, Sean Mahoney, very much our hero. And 2014, we started pickup truck, saw a couple of guys with pickup trucks and saws, and just started bumping along and just being able to provide it over to a local transfer station. And since 2014, that's grown so that we now have collaboration with UMass Amherst, which is about 40 minutes away. And there's a close collaboration there between DCR, Sean, and Lena Fletcher of UMass. And they have students that will come out and help us stack and split, not saw cut, because we all want to keep our fingers. But that's been a great resource for us and a great community builder. The town is also our partner in the sense that it's the town's land, it's the town trees. We're in the midst of just forest land. So we have all the trees in the world that we need. We've got too many. And so this is really a case of the highway department facilitating logs that aren't too big brought down to the transfer station. and then DCR will cut, we'll help split, and then we'll stack. Our biggest, newest hero is the USDA Forest Service. We're a recipient of the grant, and we've got some major equipment that will allow us to grow. We've got the ability to put out some kindling, where we've got a bigger splitter, a bigger conveyor, and we hope in the future to be able to deliver wood, which is something we can't do right now. That would be a big, big step up for us, and we still need to work that out. In terms of trying to keep a team together, we're small. Like I said, we have a core group of volunteers that keeps us going. We are reaching out to some of the local high schools that also have a service requirement for their kids, and we'd love to have them at our site to be able to help us along. It's a fun day out. We give them food from the local country store, and it's very much a feel-good operation, rightfully so. I mean, people who are using our wood bank recognize that this is a community asset, and as such, anything that we can do to help people lessen their fuel bills is a good thing. And it's a privilege for us to be able to help others in our town. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jordan. So next is Ken from the Royal Order of Red Suspenders. And I believe when his screen was on, he was in fact wearing red suspenders.
Interesting. It's not letting me turn the host has stopped my video apparently.
Oh, we'll work. Just give us a little second here.
Okay. So yes, I am wearing red suspenders. So the Royal Order of Red Suspenders, we're a faith-based group. A large church in Salem Alliance Church, that's Salem, Oregon, is the church that sponsors us. We were originally on part of their, there we are. We were on part of their budget. They still have a budget line for us. We sell enough wood to be able to cover our costs. So that's gas for our saws. The church has assisted us, and we've managed to purchase 3 dump trailers as well as 3 splitters. So we have a regular hydraulic. We have a Wolfridge, which is a pretty good brand that lifts up big rounds for us. And then we have a kinetic splitter, a flywheel splitter. And we produced this last year, we produced and delivered 113 cords of wood. We have a core group of probably about 8 people that show up almost every Saturday. I'm one of those folks. And then probably a total of about 30 volunteers. All of our wood, because we're located in Marion County, and I actually live in Polk County, a neighboring county, and we get our wood donated to us. So all of our wood comes from tree services or individuals who have a tree taken down, or we've had some pretty significant ice storms the last few years. So we've had a lot of trees that have just fallen, and we don't fall trees. We will cut it up and haul it away for you. We split it, store it. We have 4 storage sites, 2 in Polk County and 2 in Marion County. And then we deliver. So we deliver a half cord in the first 3 months. Our delivery season is October 1 to March 31. We deliver a half cord to anyone pretty much the first 3 months, and then we will determine if individuals can qualify for a second cord by need. We're not particular in terms of who gets the wood, other than, if we show up your place and you have a lot of visual evidence of well-being, we probably won't deliver a second load to you, but you would get a first. We have, like I said, a group of volunteers. So our volunteers are primarily recruited from our church family, but we're welcome to anybody in the community. We've had other churches join us. We've had just people who are interested in the ministry. We work probably 4 to 6 hours on most Saturdays at one of our various sites, or we're picking up wood from someone who's donated wood to us. And the biggest way of keeping people involved is just good communication. That's one of the reasons why I am one of the coordinators of our group. We have a pastor that oversees us, plus a couple of coordinators who are available. And I happen to be the one that's more tech savvy. And so I do a lot of the emails and communication that way. And I'll stop there.
That's perfect. I'm very impressed with the panelists staying on time. So if Marshall and Jordan and Ken, if you could turn on your cameras, we'll switch over to questions. And I saw one in the chat from Bruce. How do you cover operational and capital expenses at your wood bank? And let's start with Marshall, then Jordan and Ken, and we'll rotate through as the questions roll in. And if other folks have questions, please use either the Q&A or the chat. I do see that Jesse had a Q&A, so after Bruce's question, we'll jump into that one. So Marshall, can you talk a little bit about the funding situation?
Yeah, definitely. So as a conservation corps, we're fairly familiar with handling federal agreements, or more specifically federal funding. So if y'all have ever worked with conservation corps in the past, we work with Park Service, Forest Service, but there's that mechanism in place to kind of accept that funding. So right now with the stewardship agreement with the National Forest Foundation, a lot of that funding is coming from the federal realm, and then also coming from other grant sources, or we've got a number of fundraising folks on the partnership end that are helping to kind of support this overall initiative. But the way the conservation corps work is that we'll have a crew out for a certain amount of time. Typically, the crews are in the field for about 8 or 9 days at a time. And then you're working 40 to 80 hours a week. So we bill for that time that we're in the field. So we're a nonprofit, but we've got a model where we'll bill for the crew time. So half of that pays for our personnel in the field, but also what's budgeted for that is all of our gas, our fuel, our food that the crews have to eat, as well as some of the maintenance and upkeep costs. So that works for us because we have a large number of crews that are in the field across the Southwest. And then those overall rates kind of fuel the big machine that's Ancestral Lands and kind of covering a lot of our costs. But I have had to write a number of grants to be able to support the equipment needs that we have in the field. So we've got a lot of very expensive equipment in the field, but a lot of it just comes from cobbling together funding sources.
Great. And Jordan, what's your how are you covering operational and capital expenses?
We're at the other end of that spectrum. We're a little bit more like a bake sale in the sense that DCR is able to bring equipment. We've got a number of wood banks that are quite local to us, and DCR has their sawyers, and they've got some big splitters. We now have this grant, which is allowing us to purchase through the grant our own equipment. Other than that, we've been really relying upon DCR, and we still will rely upon DCR in terms of labor. So quite frankly, we don't have costs because we're not paying for labor, and everything that we're doing on a volunteer basis is just that. So it becomes a non-issue. I think I did mention that we would love to start to be able to deliver wood, especially since the people that are using wood from our town are fairly elderly, quite frankly, and they could use the help of not having to take little pieces of firewood in the back of their sedans. In order for us to do that, we're going to have to step up a little bit, because for right now, we're not organized, and in terms of a 501c3 or a nonprofit, so we really even can't have a bank account or anything like that. So we're at a little bit of a tipping point in terms of scale, and we'll see how it goes.
Great. How about you, Ken?
So for us, I said we were a faith-based organization, so we do have support from a church congregation when we need it, but we've been able to sell enough wood in it. So the 113 cords we deliver doesn't include wood that we have sold. So we get donated wood. We let people know when they're donating that some of the wood will go to cover our costs. So we do get some mileage reimbursement. Running diesel pickups is expensive these days. And so we have 3 dump trailers that have been paid for through that. And so we sell probably anywhere between 10 and 15 cord a year. That helps waylay our costs. And then if there's more than that, the church picks up the difference. A lot of our guys have their own saws. And so while we are quite willing to pay for repairs and gas for the saws, most of the guys do that as a voluntary contribution. And just so our costs are fairly minimal. We don't pay anybody. We have our pastor who oversees us is on staff, and we have an administrative person who assists with some of the record keeping and that kind of thing. But that's all part of the church. They have more responsibilities than just our wood bank.
Great. And I've seen multiple questions come through the chat and the Q&A about insurance. How are your 3 wood banks handling issues related to liability insurance? Let's, in this case, let's go Jordan, Ken, then Marshall, just
Sure.
to, so Marshall doesn't have to talk first each time.
Sure, thank you. It's on town land, and we ask folks to sign a waiver that has been crafted as by town council through the town that basically says you're on your own in terms of your own insurance. The town's not covering you. It's another reason for our volunteers not to be anywhere near a chainsaw, quite frankly. And I think that would change if we started to deliver wood and so forth. And I think we'll probably end up going to a 501c3 and start to get into our own insurance. The local high school, there's an organization in town that is kind of like a neighbor to neighbor that does have their own. They have organized as a 501c3, and we might be using they as a partnership to be able to have the high school kids come to volunteer on our site and still be covered through something by way of that other organization.
For our group, because we're a faith-based organization, the church has insurance to cover any participation in any church-sponsored events. So all of our volunteers are covered by the church insurance. We also do background checks, particularly for those who are going to be doing deliveries. So we do that every couple of years. We run background checks for all of our crews, refresh those to make sure that we're having quality folks who are doing the work, and that doesn't disqualify you if your background is less than perfect, but it just makes us cautious about how we put you at risk when we do that. And so our insurance keeps us, so we don't fall trees ever. We used to do that back in the day, but now we will cut up stuff that's on the ground, but we try to stay away from widowmakers and any trees that are standing. We'll get someone else to fall for us.
And fairly similar to us, we're an established conservation corps, so this is pretty much what we do. So insurance, workman's comp, as well as pretty strong policies and procedures. So we do a lot of the felling, operate the heavy equipment, but this is just years and years of kind of experience of running conservation corps. So we're fairly well covered in paperwork.
Great. I'm wondering if you all have advice. You mentioned, some of you mentioned a little bit about how you're recruiting. What draws people to volunteer at the wood bank, and what tips do you have to keep them volunteering? And in this case, let's go Ken, Marshall, then Jordan.
Well, we obviously, when we're looking for volunteers, we're putting out things in our congregation. We have had some stories printed in the newspaper. with some, front page kind of coverage. That always gets us more wood donations. Plus, it gets us people who are interested in just spending some time. Part of my job as the executive director of a different nonprofit, I get to attend a lot of collaborative meetings. And so we talk about our ability to provide wood to often their clientele, but often those folks will also have an opportunity to volunteer with us if they're interested. Most of those are short term. The folks that are pretty regular are folks that have kind of committed to the ministry of doing that. One of the things that is different about our group is because we're a faith-based group, we ask people if there's anything they'd like us to pray for them for. So it's not a requirement. We don't expect everybody to want to do that, but lots of people appreciate that, especially during the last couple of years would have been pretty tough with COVID and the challenges of our economy. So.
And then it was me next, correct? Okay, I'll go.
Yes.
Yeah, so I keep referring again back to the conservation core model, but I want to dip in a little bit more. So our operations, we have crews in the field typically from March until November. And on a single project, I've got roughly 30 folks on the ground, kind of processing that material and then getting that stuff out. So trying to find volunteers for that amount of time frame, and then also the amount of training that we need to put into them, because it's such a large project, takes a huge amount of resources and energy to get everybody up to speed. And that's also been the concern about the insurance and liability, since we have so much equipment in the future that we've got personnel or employed folks or paid folks on the ground that are just implementing operations. So with the ancestral lands, we're an AmeriCorps program, so we hire young people typically between the ages of 18 and 30. And our offices are located within the communities that we serve. So for the Hopi Reservation, we typically hire young folks, typically between 18 and like 24, 25. But it's really important for us that as these wood banks, or this idea of wood banks, starts to grow, that we provide employment opportunities and training experience for these young folks as well. So that's the route that we've taken, is that part of our rate, again, is helping to pay these young people to learn these skill sets, but more specifically, make sure that we're running a full year of operations. So the way that we've been doing it is it's fairly easy to market a young person running a chainsaw, felling a tree. We've also got like ATVs, big trailers, and a bunch of equipment in the field that we can fairly easily advertise what that looks like. But on the back end, what it involves is trying to get the young people to also work with our partners like Forest Service and NFF to understand career pathways, as well as just project management and a lot of the certifications that we issue these young people. So getting them to stay with us for the long term is good, at least for their career development and kind of furthering where they want to be in the future. We do work very closely with a lot of federal entities, and with the skill sets that they obtain, they're in a really good position to obtain employment after our program. So our folks, again, they technically are volunteers underneath AmeriCorps, but they do receive a living stipend, which helps pay for whatever they need back at home.
I think I'm next. Our scale is so small that it doesn't take a lot of volunteers to keep it going, because we're only dealing with 18 cords a year at this point. Our wood bank is at the transfer station in town, which is a little tiny capped landfill. Everybody who's got trash in town that's getting rid of it is going to the transfer station. So we're visible in that sense. I don't think I do a good job of media, and I think that is on me to do a better job. I also think that it's as simple as, since people are there, it's just like going to a store in the sense you're walking right by it. A simple kiosk in terms of, big lettering, volunteer day on this day and so forth, please come and we will give you a snack. I think that it's word of mouth. At our scale, it's just like, who do you know? And it's still, at least from my standpoint, it's physical therapy equals mental therapy. I mean, you feel good doing it. You feel good, why you're doing it as well. And I think that people who do volunteer tend to stick around a little bit because it's enjoyable. And I think it's up to people like me to promote it a little bit better. So there's my own goal.
Excellent. We are getting a lot of Q&A questions and chat questions. One of the ones that came in that relates to volunteers is sort of your onboarding and safety program. So what do you do when you have a new volunteer as it relates to safety? And I actually forgot what order we were, whose turn it is. Let's go back to the original order just to get me back on track. So we'll go Marshall, Jordan, and then Ken.
Okay. We've got a fairly straightforward onboarding process in terms of signing paperwork and getting them enrolled in insurance and all that stuff. But I think more of the question will be towards trying to get them trained or get them caught up to speed. So all of our saw crews, anybody that's running a saw, the first course that they take is that S212 chainsaw certification. We also couple that with the wilderness first aid course because there needs to be that CPR component in complementing the chainsaw certification. But we try and go a step more by providing that 3-day course just because we had so many personnel and so many saws running. We've also got a lot of like JHAs as well as just equipment training with all the tools that we have in the field. So we don't throw people straight at it. We usually like to roll out for at least a whole solid month of training and certification for our participants to make sure that they're being safe.
Sounds extensive. Thank you. Jordan.
No chainsaws.
That solves that.
Well, you still got splitters. You still need 10 fingers, so no chainsaws. The logs themselves through DCR, the logs are piled up, so they'll bring them down. So we're flipping rounds over to splitters. Some of the splitters have a hydraulic arm, so you're not just blowing out your lower back. And then it's just showing people how to use a splitter. I mean, all of this stuff is more dangerous the more often you're using it, because you just get so complacent because it's just more of same. It's a little bit of a safety thing. So I just saw it in the chat. So just give me one more minute. Through the grant that we got through the Forest Service and Alliance for Green Heat, we also took some of that grant money and put it forward towards flue thermostats as well as carbon monoxide and smoke detectors. So part of giving out this wood to folks, we're not the wood stove police, but we're trying to make it a little bit safer once our efforts go to their flue box.
And Ken.
So for us, I like the idea of the chainsaw certification. We don't have that right now. We're asking all of our volunteers who are going to run a saw to come with, or we will provide chaps, gloves, ear and eye protection. Saws. Previously, we don't let them go on a saw until they get a chance to work alongside one of our experienced cutters. Obviously, with our splitters, we have experienced people doing that, and then showing new volunteers, just kind of walking them through the protocols of how to operate those equipment safely, particularly keeping all of your fingers intact. It's kind of scary machines. They're very unforgiving. So we try and just make sure that we are staying as safe as possible. We also have first aid kits on the job site all the time, including tourniquets and those kinds of things in case someone is injured seriously.
Jordan kind of started talking about this, and in the as we continue to talk about safety, there's the other aspect of safety, which is the recipient. safe burning practices. And could the three of you, we don't have to go in order, just as you have something. Are your recipients using this for cooking or heating? Do you, to what extent do you provide information about safe burning? And can you kind of, run with that sort of area of inquiry for me, if you don't mind?
Sure, I'll speak to that. The folks that get wood from the wood bank are filling out a voucher by way of the town. It's they're not having to prove anything, but by getting that voucher, it's also giving them links to best burn practices. DCR, I'm sure everybody else does the same thing too in terms of the moisture content of the wood that's going out the door. To answer the specific question about how it's being used, it's being used to heat their houses. The town is old, and so it has older housing stock. So a lot of big old houses that are poorly insulated, and people kind of hunker down a little bit. And the wood stoves are in one area of their house, and that's where it's going to be warm. So for the most part, it's not for cooking. It's really for supplemental heat, so that they're not spending money, getting stuff delivered.
Yeah, that would be similar for us. I don't know of any of our recipients who actually cook with wood heat. I know most of them are using wood stoves. There's a few fireplaces or fireplace inserts. I know we've stopped delivering to some people who are using it for backyard wiener roasts. So we kind of said, "Lo, this is really our intention is to help you heat your home or get you through a tough spot." And that's one of the challenges, is that there are people who would like us to be able to supply their entire winter supply of wood. We simply can't do that. We're intended to be a crisis, like help you get over a tough spot so that you can use other resources, your electricity or your gas, to heat your home as you normally would. But if you run into a difficult time, we're kind of a backup plan for that. We have a few people whose only source of heat is wood, but they're usually using us to supplement their wood supply, not provide all of it.
Yeah, and the same for us. We're I'm kind of having a little bit of a hard time with the question. We're a much kind of larger scale operation, and just kind of give you all an idea of what happens. So we've got about 300 acres with the Forest Service that's currently on agreement. We field the crews to fell that material. That material is then pulled out to the road and then categorized into 3 different resources. So for my community where I'm from, the thought process of kind of stockpiling all that and then burning that is not a good practice. The entire tree is usable. So we've gotten the treatment plan from the Forest Service and then NFF, and then we kind of categorize it into 3 things. One is obviously firewood. The second one is mulch made out of the tops of the trees as well as the branches, and then also post and pole. So the post and pole can be used for any traditional or cultural building sources. So our population that we serve is primarily from the Hopi and Navajo tribes that are in the Arizona, New Mexico region. But those folks come out to the site to pick up the firewood itself. So one of the challenges that we're facing specifically out here in Arizona is that there's a huge need for firewood, specifically for home heating purposes. There's not too much access to propane or either electricity. So a lot of folks were relying previously on coal to be able to heat homes. But with the closure and the decline of coal, they've switched over to kind of firewood, which is why the Wood for Life initiative has really taken off. So there are a number of organizations that have been popping up to try and provide those resources and written material. So we're relying a lot more heavily on those folks that have gotten like documents or paperwork together to kind of provide a little bit more information for that home heating or specifically stove maintenance for just keeping their houses warm. The big challenge again that we're facing is the amount of material that's needed. We can't produce that dry. We have to be felling green trees. And then folks come pretty regularly to try and pick that stuff up. But the education component has been difficult in terms of either changing our firewood gathering time to the spring, or that material that they come and pick up from site sitting over until next year until it's ready to be burned. But again, a lot of our folks, because they need that wood now, are burning a lot of the green materials, which is why we start fairly early in March. So yeah, there's a number of organizations that we lead on to provide that material to folks.
Awesome. So as we close up, we have 3 minutes. That means each of you have 1 minute remaining. And I would like to ask what your future goals are for your Firewood Bank, or the aspect of your overall project that's Firewood Bank related. And let's start with Marshall.
Okay. As a conservation corps, we're again in a really unique position to take on these large scale projects. One thing that's incredibly important to me when we're talking about partnerships. So right now, the key folks that we have working on the Coconino National Forest Foundation, United States Forest Service, and then us as Ancestral Lands, is that co-management piece. So if we're really wanting these firewood projects to be successful, then our partners really need to be bought into that idea and also prioritize wood production. So the really awesome opportunity that's happening here in Region 2 and Region 3 is there's this idea of co-management, right, of our resources. So especially as Indigenous communities, how are we involved in the management of those resources or our local forests? So we're really moving into that role. The Wood for Life partnership is really taking off down here in the Coconino, and we're starting up operations on the San Juan in Colorado to start serving some of the native folks kind of on the northern border of Arizona and New Mexico. So we're ramping up for operations on that side this year, so growing fairly quickly.
Excellent. And Jordan?
Like to get ahead. Like to be ahead of the game. So part of the grant, fairly cheap, were these half-cord mesh bags. Place them on pallets, and if we could start to do that earlier in the season and just get them moved around, stack parking kind of a thing with a tarp over the top of them, so that we have more wood that's being dried out sooner. I mean, the winter months in New England will start to dry out wood pretty quickly once it's split, but we're not letting wood out until it's dry enough. So if we could have, we've got wood bins, so that's where people pick it up. But if one of the things I'm thinking about is if we have these mesh bags and they're full of split wood, but you don't know. Some of the logs are green, some of them are not. Put them in the mesh bag, and if we could deliver them to a person's house in April, knowing that they're going to use it for heating in the winter months, we're going to give them half a year of seasoning right there. We would start to be ahead of the game and probably be able to serve more people. So I think that's where I think we'd like to head, but we shall see.
Our group, like I said, we work year round, so we're always we probably have 100 cord of wood on hand all the time, so we never give out green wood. We use moisture meters to try and keep it under 20% moisture wise in terms of what we're delivering to folks. Future wise, our volunteers, most of our volunteers are either retired or near retirement. And so that allows them to do some work in between our Saturdays. I'm still working full time, so I work on Saturdays during the winter months when we do delivery. I break out time during the day because I'm an executive director. I can shift my time around a little and do deliveries during the day. But maintaining a core of people, some of our folks, we have one volunteer who's 92 years old, still comes out, runs a chainsaw. He's an amazing splitter. If you watch him use a maul and a wedge, he'll take the biggest rounds and break them up. But we need people to be able to replace those. Younger folks who want to come out usually have complications with family obligations. And so it's just challenging to be able to replenish the supply of volunteers with younger, healthy folks, as opposed to us older guys who are starting to wear out.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate the three of you sharing about your wood bank operation. I note that we have 95 people on this at this summit today. So we were really hoping to have geographic spread, wood bank operation, diversity in terms of size, scale, processes, and this just turned out really wonderful. We're going to hand it off to Rick in just a minute to introduce himself and begin the research update portion of the summit. So Rick, it's all you. Oh, I'll also mention if we did not get to your questions, we're noting those in the Q&A in the chat. We can talk about it in the regional breakout sessions. We may also want to continue the conversation after the summit. So thank you very much. And Rick, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Dr. Leahy, and everyone. Welcome. It's great to be here. It really is great to be here. We've all been meeting, as everyone's been mentioning and alluding to, monthly, essentially, for quite a while now. So it's just fantastic to see everybody and welcome everyone. I just want to mention a couple of things before I turn it over to our two speakers to give a little research update with respect to the work that they are doing. I want to, of course, thank a couple of folks, and the title of our session right here is Research Updates. So research isn't possible without the individuals, and I do want to thank Jess Leahy and Elisa up in Maine. You know, Jess really broke a lot of great trail in terms of the early research related to wood banks, and Elisa's doing a great job pulling us all together today. And of course, this is a collaborative effort. And I also want to, of course, thank Clarice Hart at Harvard Forest. This has really been such a huge area of passion for her, and she really got me involved. So just want to give a tip of the hat to those folks. But you also need support. You also need finances. So I want to thank Brian Brayshaw and the folks at the Forest Service for funding some of this research and some of our research here at the University of Massachusetts. And I do have a link. So Jess had mentioned when we started the Wood Bank this session today, when she kicked off our Wood Bank forum a little bit earlier, around noon Eastern, she talked about a peer-reviewed paper. And so I'm actually putting this in the chat for everybody. So we have a link there to a research paper. That is a research paper that was produced, of course, with Clarice Hart, myself, and a couple of co-authors, Dr. Jay Dampier from the University of Wisconsin, Dr. Eric Griffith from Duke University. These are part of an original cohort that we pulled together, folks like myself that have a background in natural resources, but also some fantastic social science training. And of course, with wood banks, we're really dealing with that interface between natural resources, obviously trees, wood, but then of course the social component, dealing with the folks that are the end users, the volunteers, the coordinators at these wood banks, all of you folks that are here today. So we've just had a great team, and we've enjoyed regular meetings as well. We're working on another paper that's discussing the operational aspects of actually setting up a wood bank, and then we actually want to go into the field and do some in-person interviews with some of the folks in the field. So that's sort of what we're doing here at the University of Massachusetts, and I will get a chance to turn it over to a couple of folks. The second individual is actually one of my immediate colleagues here at the University of Massachusetts, but the first person that we're going to turn this over to is Kieran Kilkenny at Oregon State University. He's going to talk to us a little bit about some of the research that he's doing. So Kieran, I'll let you introduce yourself to folks and tell everyone what it is that you're doing exactly.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Rick. I appreciate it. Let me share my screen really quick here. Oh, Elisa, can you enable screen sharing so I can share my presentation?
You should be able to have that capability now.
All right. Can everybody, let's see, what are you guys seeing? Are you seeing the presenter view, or are you seeing?
Yeah, we're seeing the grid there on the right-hand side. Just hit your display settings, Kieran.
Yeah, thanks. How's that?
That is good.
Perfect. Thanks, Rick. All right. Thanks, everybody. So my name, like mentioned, is Kieran Kilkenny, and today I'm going to talk to you a little about my research involving wood heat in Pacific Northwest homes, in which I use ethnographic methods to inform engineering design. So a little more background about me. I'm a dual major master's student studying mechanical engineering and applied anthropology. And I work at OSU's Humanitarian Engineering Lab, where my advisors are Dr. Nortika McCarty and Dr. Xiaozing Zhang. And I also want to mention, I'm really new to this area of wood heating, and so I think a lot of you are going to have a lot more knowledge than me. So if I say anything that's old news, please bear with me. So some background, some motivation. We know wood smoke can be harmful to human health and to the environment. And we've heard a lot of stories about how modern wood stoves can meet emissions requirements during laboratory testing, but not always during real life use. And in response to this, some communities and regulatory bodies are restricting the use of wood stoves or attempting to ban the use of wood stoves as a whole. But we also know that wood is a critical source of heat for many people. My advisor loves to say that wood is the oldest form of solar energy storage. So if we can continue to improve heating stoves by reducing their emissions and making them more fuel efficient, we can help wood to become an important part of our renewable energy portfolio. In our project, we have two specific aims. The first is to develop a retrofit device that can be installed in 2 wood heater models in order to reduce their emissions and improve their heating efficiency, or to make them less smoky and allow people to use less wood to provide the same amount of heat. And the goal of this retrofit is to bring older or non-compliant stoves into current EPA emission regulations. So these 2 photos I have here are the 2 models that we've chosen to develop our retrofit device for. One of the thoughts behind a retrofit is that it could be cheaper and potentially easier to implement for stove changeout programs. So the way we're going about reducing emissions, improving heating efficiency is by injecting jets of forced air into the fire. And that leads into my second specific aim, which is to develop a set of design rules for doing this. These design rules will be made open source and shared with manufacturers so that they can aid in the development of cleaner burning stoves moving forward. So a lot of what we're trying to do is just gather knowledge and then share that knowledge as wisely as we can. So one of the research problems is that we know anecdotally wood stoves are not used the same way in real life as they're used in a laboratory. But we need to understand this better, and we need to back up the anecdotes with data. So some of our questions are, how are wood stoves being used? And what kind of jobs do people need their stoves to do? We need to figure out how to translate the ways people use their stoves into engineering design requirements. So on these two photos I use to illustrate that I think real life is a lot messier than a lab. On the bottom left, this is from a stove manufacturer. This is their concept of what a stove could look like in your home. I don't know if you noticed, but it's very clean. There's white furniture right next to the stove. That's an interesting choice. The top right is a photo from one of my research participants. So they have kids, there's toys strewn around, there's a poker laying under the stove, there's ash on in front of the door. I think this is a more realistic representation of what a stove can look like. So I use this to say that if you're working in a clean lab where you're running a very strict protocol, it might not be as representative of real life as you'd like it to be. So the way that we're going about learning from wood stove users is by performing a needs assessment. The goal of our needs assessment is to inform our engineering design process and help us develop an in-house stove testing protocol that is representative of real-life use cases. And we'll use this testing protocol to test our retrofit device as we develop it. Our needs assessment consists of 3 parts: a survey instrument, semi-structured interviews, and sensor-based data collection. And we're trying to collect information from different sources so that we can triangulate and just corroborate or validate the information that we're collecting. So the first part of our needs assessment is our surveys. And the goal of the surveys is to collect qualitative and quantitative data, as well as to give respondents the option to volunteer for home visits and interviews that I'll talk about in a minute. Our target respondents are people who heat mainly with wood, and we've been trying to recruit and distribute through local businesses, nonprofits, government offices. We've posted our survey on hearth.com. John Ackerley, thank you, has shared our survey in the Alliance for Green Heat newsletter. And we've also shared our survey with our industry and community advisory groups. The survey is still open. We're still looking to collect more responses and get a better sample size because we want to hear from as many people as possible. To give you an example of some of the data we collect and kind of what we can learn from that, and again, these might be things that you all know, but on the left, I have a plot that shows the responses for a question that asks, what is the maximum amount of time that you need your stove to provide heat while it's unattended? And here you can see that about 40 or over 40% of our respondents need their stove to provide heat for between 4 to 8 hours while it's unattended. So maybe this is an overnight burn, maybe this is you're going to work. To translate that into an engineering design requirement, we can say, well, we know that our retrofit needs to be able to keep a fire going for at least that long in order for people to want to use it and be able to use it. On the right is a question that asks how dry the wood that you burn in your stove is. And to be able to design our survey, we chose to define fully seasoned wood as stored and air dried for 6 months or more. We know that it can take much more time depending on the wood, the moisture content, the location, but to make it cut and dry for a survey, this is what we chose. But even here, you see that 8% of our respondents say that they burn partially seasoned wood. So maybe it's fresh cut, maybe it just hasn't had time, maybe it's stored in not an ideal location. So we also know from this that our retrofit needs to be able to burn wood with a variety of moisture contents. Next, in our semi-structured interviews, I go to a participant's home. We spend an hour talking, and I'm really looking to learn about their habits, their needs, and their challenges surrounding heating their home with wood. These interviews are a great way to get more in-depth, more personal information than the survey. I can talk to a person and I can let them talk about what they're really interested in talking about. And so I can look around their home, they can show me their property, they can show me how they use their stove. And while I'm there, if they're okay with this, I take photos. So on the left is a photo from one of my participants who's a contractor, and that red bin, they always fill with contracting scraps, just scraps they get to take home from job sites. So this is a great way for them to save some money burning. But it's something for us to think about because not only does our retrofit have to be able to burn different types of hardwood, softwood, different moisture contents, it has to burn things that aren't just cordwood. The two photos on the right are from the same home, and something I want to show here is just some different sizes of wood that our retrofit has to be able to accommodate. You can see kindling, you can see big split pieces of wood. And then in the middle photo here, if I can kind of circle this, this is one of our sensors. So these logs are stacked on a small metal scale, and underneath is one of our sensors that I'll get to soon. So from the interviews, I take notes, and then I can do what's called a content analysis to code for themes. So this is a preliminary analysis from one interview I performed, and there's 6 themes that appeared in this interview. But I just wanted to talk about a couple of them. So one quote from this participant is, "As I'm getting a little older and the arthritis is getting worse, I appreciate the heat more. 70 degrees from the wood stove feels better than 70 degrees from the heat pump." So this idea of comfort heat came up a lot when I was talking to people. This participant also says he likes burning with hardwood because fur has pitch that causes creosote buildup, which can cause flue fires. But on the other hand, hardwood burns fast and can create more ash. So people have strong fuel preferences, and this is dependent on where you live and what you have access to, but even dependent on maybe what time of day or what time of year it is. People burn different things. So we need to be able to accommodate all of the different things that people will burn in their stove. And then finally, one of the really important ones, this participant said that if the wind blew more than 3 miles per hour and more than 5 snowflakes fell, we would lose power. So our retrofit currently requires electricity to run the fans. But a lot of the people that we're working with in our research live in rural, isolated areas that do not have reliable power. So we need to understand that people are not always going to have electricity. So at the very least, our retrofit cannot degrade the performance of the stove if there is no power. So finally, we're also collecting sensor-based data. We have 2 sensors. On the left, this is the exact sensor. It's an infrared temperature sensor that we attach to a participant stove using a magnet. And it mostly just gives us an idea of whether or not the stove is in use. So we can say, okay, the stove is on, the stove is off. On the right, the fuel sensor is what's called a compressive logging load cell. And what it does is gives us time resolved fuel weight data. So it's like a bathroom scale, except instead of one measurement, it gives us weight with time. The way we use the fuel sensor is we place it near a participant's stove. We put a small metal basket on top, and we ask participants to store their wood on this scale. Then we also ask participants to only place wood from the sensor into their stove. In this way, we're able to see how much wood people are putting in their fire at one time. We're able to see how often people are loading their stove, and we actually get timestamps so we can see what time of day people are loading their stove. Here's some plots that we can make with that sensor data that we collect. So on the top, that blue line, that's the fuel weight data in kilograms. And then on the bottom graph, that orange line is temperature in Celsius. So on the top, every time that blue line increases, someone has placed more wood onto the sensor. And every time it decreases, someone has removed wood from the sensor. Those red circles are actually loading events because we can validate that someone has not only have they removed wood from the sensor, but when you see that orange line at the bottom increases or is above 0, that means the stove is on. So this is how we're able to check and see, okay, not only did they remove wood from the scale, but they also put it into the stove. I really like these plots because they also show an example of non-compliance. So it's important to be able to use more than one sensor because we can get an idea of if they're being used correctly. So the way we can see this is each of these tick marks, 100,000 seconds, is about 27 hours, so just over a day. So what you see here is on the bottom, there is a fire going during that first day, but they did not use the fuel sensor. They were not storing wood on there. So this is important because we can check in and make sure that people are using the sensors correctly by checking on the data as we're collecting it. Another thing we can do with this sensor data is aggregate it and look for patterns. So I want to note that this is shoulder season data, and what we can do is see like take all the loading events from all the households we collected data in, and we can see here that the average loading event is about 2 kilograms or about 4 pounds of wood. We can also break this down further into different types of loading events. So we can look at cold starts or maybe the last load of the day. And this allows us to quantify what we're learning and help design rigorous test protocols and help inform our engineering design process. So finally, I do want to mention again, our survey is still open. And we're still trying to collect data. We really want to get a better sample size. So if you think this work is interesting at all, you would like to take the survey because you burn with wood, or you want to get involved and help us distribute the survey, that would be amazing. This is where you can access the survey. This is my contact information. We're also looking to collect more sensor data. So the same goes for that. If you would like to have us place sensors in your home or help us distribute the sensors to people who you think would be interested in getting involved, we would be really happy to talk to you about what we're doing. And we will share all of our results. So again, if you're interested in what we're learning, we're happy to talk about that too.
Great,
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Kieran. We're going to turn it over to my colleague here at the University of Massachusetts, Sarah Butler at the Family Forest Research Center. Sarah, you are up.
Hello, everyone. Okay, I'm going to present results today on very preliminary results on our Firewood Bank survey. I'm a research fellow at the University of Massachusetts. I work at the Family Forest Research Center, which is a collaborative group between UMass and the Forest Service. We have a big team that's been working on the survey and making it possible, with folks' names listed here. So our goal of the survey was to get a better understanding of the operations and the structure and the function of the firewood banks, as well as challenges, barriers that they face, and their sustainability and longevity of these firewood banks into the future. We did this by implementing a national survey. We also sent the survey to some wood banks that we knew of in Canada and some in New Zealand. And we sent it out to 126 firewood banks that we had kind of a known deliverable mailing address. So far, we've gotten 39 responses, which is a cooperation rate of about 31%, which is not great, but not terrible. And we're planning next to do follow-up calls and emails to increase our sample size. I'm just going to jump into some results. So I'm going to present the results from the survey that we've gotten so far in the same kind of format. So the question is at the top of the graph, and then the y-axis is what proportion of respondents answered the question in that way, or sometimes the count of the respondents. And then across the x-axis is the data that we're looking at. So the first thing we're interested in is, how would you best describe your firewood bank? These categories aren't mutually exclusive, so someone could answer in more than one way if they identify with more than one group. Most firewood banks are nonprofits, community groups, faith organizations, with fewer being identified as a municipality or a tribal group. And there were a couple write-ins as well. And interestingly, no one identifies as kind of a for-profit group. We also asked some financial questions. We were wondering, how does the Firewood Bank receive funding? Most people get financial donations, some also grants, probably partially contributed to by the Alliance for Green Heat grant program over the past year. Fewer still do their own fundraising. And then this other category encapsulates people who don't have any funding at all, as well as other write-ins. We're also interested in kind of the annual budget for the firewood banks. So we see about a third of the firewood banks have zero budget. Another third have about $5,000 or more as their budget, with everyone else kind of falling in between. We're interested in the recipient selection process. So, for example, are there conditions or qualifications that someone needs to meet in order to get firewood? So like the panelists in the first panel group were talking about, one qualification that many people related to is you have to use the firewood to heat your home. You can't use it for a hot dog roast or your wood-fired sauna or a campfire. A lot of firewood banks had no qualification that the recipient needed to meet. And then there were some firewood banks that kind of focus on specific groups of people. So maybe an older age group, or people with small children, people in poor health conditions, or with lower income, veterans, or year-round residents. We're interested in the wood source. So firewood banks give all this wood out to their community, but where does it originate? Mostly from donations from the community, donations from forestry groups. This includes sawmills and logging groups, donations from developers, so folks that will go out and clear the land and then donate that to the firewood bank. And then fewer firewood banks actually purchase log lengths of wood or purchase split firewood. And then even fewer get donations from federal land, power companies, kind of town conservation committees, or tribal lands. We're really interested in the scale of firewood banks across the nation. So we asked this question in a couple different ways in the survey, and I'm just going to present on how much each firewood bank processes in a year. But we also asked them how much they can store in a given year and how much they give to their recipients in a typical year. So we see, a big group of firewood banks have a capacity of 50 cords or less, but there's, a substantial amount of firewood banks that have a higher capacity that provide over 100 cords of wood in a year. We're really interested in the community need and how that relates to firewood banks and the future of firewood banks within that community. So we asked firewood banks, have you seen the demand for wood change over the past 5 years? Most firewood banks said yes, they have seen the demand increase over the past 5 years. Related to that, we're interested in the firewood bank operates in a community. Is there need for firewood in that community beyond the capacity of the firewood bank right now? Most people said either yes, they do see a greater need in their community beyond what they can provide for. And then a good amount of people said it depends. So it might be weather related. Maybe there's a really cold winter and more people in the community need more help with firewood. And the wood bank maybe not be able to provide that help in really cold years. We're really interested in concerns, the firewood bank operators' concerns about kind of their long-term sustainability in the communities. So we asked them to rank their concern from great concern to no concern at all in these different categories. And for the purposes of this graph, I binned the ones that were just great concern, and that's what's presented here. So we see great concern and concern for lack of volunteers for wood delivery, which is this blue bar, lack of volunteers for wood processing, just general lack of money. And then interesting, I think this leadership bar is interesting. Just kind of anecdotally from interviews that we did with wood bank operators leading up to this survey, as well as data from Clarice Hart and her colleagues in initial research. We see that oftentimes firewood banks are started by an individual or a small group of individuals, and it's really their passion project. And we're really curious to see once that leader steps down from that position for any number of reasons, is there leadership that can then step up and take over the wood bank? And we do see that leadership or lack of leadership in the future is a concern for a lot of wood banks. Speaking of future, we're interested in what is the future of wood banks. So we asked Do you have plans to stay in the community in the next 10 years? And minus this one person who didn't answer, this is the green graph, everyone plans to stay in their community over the next 10 years, which is wonderful. And hopefully people will just have the resources to be able to do that. We're also interested to know if they have the desire to kind of expand, if there were resources to do so. So most wood banks say, yes, they would like to expand if there are the resources to do so. One of those potential resources is being a part of a network, which is, what the summit is trying to do, as well as some of the work from the Alliance for Green Heat have done over the past years, and what this group plans to do in the future. A network could include anything from information on the operations of a wood bank to technical assistance or information about safety and equipment, things like that. And we see that most people are very interested in kind of being a part of a larger network of firewood banks, which is great. Like Elisa, I also created a word cloud. So we were interested in the survey to hear what are the greatest challenges in your own words. So we had an open-ended question on the survey. And the larger the word, it just indicates that more people used that word in their answer. So here are, in their own words, some greatest challenges from the firewood bank operators. So you can see you need volunteers, younger volunteers, additional time and equipment, things like that stand out as some of the challenges that the firewood banks that responded to the survey are facing. We're also really interested in understanding if there are unintended benefits of firewood banks. So firewood banks kind of have a specific goal to provide firewood and fuel to the community and the people that are in need. But beyond that specific goal, are there other benefits that either the community gets or that the firewood bank itself gets from providing this resource? And you can see this is similarly, the bigger the word, the more times the people said it in their answer. So you have community, togetherness, fellowship, support, friends, etc. So I just wanted to thank everyone. Probably we got some surveys back from people in this summit. So I want to thank you so much for filling out the survey. If you're interested in filling it out and you have not yet, I put the link here, or you can email me at sbutler@umass.edu.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. I actually put the link to the survey in the chat for both your survey and Kiernan's as well. Kiernan said that his is still open. Do you have an end date, Sarah, just while everybody's listening here?
We don't have an end date yet. It's also still open. We got one yesterday, so we're still accepting them.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Let's let that be our only question then. Just clarification, folks, to everybody, because we are right up at the 1:20 mark, and I do want to make sure folks get a break, that both Kiernan's and Sarah's surveys are still open. The URLs are in the chat box. And Sarah, you are going to be, let me ask one more question then. You're going to be in the regional discussions, correct? You'll be here in the New England section?
Yes, I will.
Excellent. So Kieran will be in the Northwest section. Sarah will be in the New England section. So if there are further questions and you feel a particular passion to hop into one of those sections to ask Sarah or Kieran, just feel free to join us here in the New England section or the Northwest section. Otherwise, let's make that my final word here, and I'll turn it back over to Elisa and Jess. Thank you both.
Thank you all. It's wonderful to hear how we're learning more about wood banks in your own words from all sort of different angles. So before we go to break, I thought I'd get everybody excited for a moment, because we're going to have some door prizes. So for coming to the summit today, you could win one of these excellent donated items. So the first door prize that we are going to assign by random number generator is the National Forest Foundation hat. So drum roll, please. Our winner is Fallon Graff from New Mexico. Congratulations, you are a new owner of a National Forest Foundation's hat. So with that, we'll take a brief break. Please, I'm going to switch to a different slide here. Please take the time to stand up, stretch, look away from your computer, enjoy the break, and we'll be back in approximately 5 minutes at 1:25. Thank you all. Welcome back, everybody. We're running a couple of minutes late, so I'm going to send you straight into your regional discussion sessions for right now. So your hosts should be waiting. Please look in the chat for the link to the region that you'd like to join. And when you return, this will exit you out of the webinar. When you return, please use the link, the original link that you used to get into the webinar to get back here. So we'll come back about 5 minutes before the end of the session for a little wrap up. But for now, enjoy your regional discussions, and please let me know if you have any troubles. As always, I'm here to answer any questions, and I'll remain in this webinar. So if you have any trouble, please email me or text or call. I will put my email and contact information in the chat. Enjoy your regional discussions. And so you should be able to see other sessions that you weren't able to be at today later on, once we put that together and share it with everyone, which we definitely will. All right, so it looks like we have 2 of our regional session facilitators in right now. For those who are present, Darian, would you like to give a brief idea of what you talked about in the Southeast section, I believe?
Yeah, so a large thing that we took up a lot of more time, which is great, is the hurdles that come with having firewood banks in the Southeast. A big portion of that was getting deliveries made, so they need volunteers to drive, and there's just not big enough trucks and enough people to make those deliveries. Another is skilled volunteers, particularly when it comes to getting the hard to get wood. And that also comes with a bit of like liability issues. So figuring out liability waivers, insurance, those kind of things, which these might be maybe not just regional. I think we've heard this from a lot of people. Another one, classic, we need younger volunteers. How do we continue that sustainability of leadership, transfer of leadership? And we also kind of had a unique urban dilemma, especially it was Jamestown in Georgia, where interfacing with policy, so trying to actually convince people that they do use firewood, like heating with firewood is a real thing and it's needed. Another one was talking about how the Southeast is a little bit, maybe not isolated, but there are not as many, it's densely packed firewood banks. So when it comes to maybe sharing regional knowledge, they'd like to maybe extend it a tiny bit, because we know the Northeast has a ton of those firewood banks everywhere. And so it may be a little bit isolating if it's just the Southeast meeting up. And I think the takeaway was really that the community has to get involved. I mean, none has to, but it is the best case scenario that the whole entire community has a buy-in to this idea. And maybe a part of that is creating a lot of fun activities or fun events, and that will especially get the young people involved. So I think that was most of our.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We don't have time for long wrap up on this regional discussion session. I apologize. But I'd love to hear a word from each of the other facilitators, if you'd like, before we jump into the next session? Is there any? I think Darian gave a great rundown of a lot of issues that a lot of wood banks are facing.
This is Jessica. I was in the Northeast group, and we had a lot of enthusiasm for continuing the conversation. So it's all the gamut. So we want to talk more about volunteer safety, fundraising, wood sourcing, equipment maintenance, but we also talked about format, and their email and email lists were over any of the other options. Folks do use email, and that's the best way to access the most people and interest in a in-person get together. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Clarice, do you have a couple of words?
Sure. We had a lot of people, and I did introductions, which sort of took up the whole time, but each person shared something that they felt was like sort of a regional concern for the Northwest and Alaska. And so we had everything from sort of thinking about fire and how fuel reduction can kind of contribute to wood banks, to thinking about like the big trees that are out there and, how do you buck these 40-inch trees, reducing wood smoke, thinking about air quality, especially in the valleys. Yeah, so a lot of great things. I made a whole list.
Thank you. Do we have Maddie Smith? Oh, it looks like we might have lost one of our facilitators, but I'm sure that the Southwest discussion was also fruitful. So I think with that, we're gonna move on to our topic discussions. We're going to do this wonderful circus of breakout discussions again. So you'll have a chance to follow whichever topic you choose. But first, we're going to have short introductions from each of our speakers. So we'll start with Larry Brockman. Larry?
Yeah, I need permission to share.
Joe, could you help us out with that?
If you would stop sharing your screen,
Oh, of course.
they should be able to.
Thank you. Joe is the secret Maine IT person who has been helping us along here. So thanks, Joe. Larry, it's all yours.
All right, thank you. I'm going to try to show.
And Larry, just to clarify, this is your intro, your plugin for your
Yeah, this is just a real quick. Yeah, 5 minutes is what I've been told I've got. So. And I can't seem to get my video to pop on, so you can see my screen. Okay, thank you. Larry Brockman with the EPA's Burnwise program, and thanks for the opportunity. And I apologize, my video is not working. It was working earlier, so you can't see me, but hopefully you can see my screen. But thanks for the opportunity. For me, I'm very passionate about this topic, the importance of and benefits of burning dry season wood, really from a health standpoint, a fire safety, efficiency standpoint. And I was really glad to hear some of the folks already talked about the importance of providing dry season wood and through their wood banks. During our longer discussion, we'll also talk about the unprecedented funding that's available through grants and the direct consumer rebates to help with home heating. The Inflation Reduction Act was passed about a year ago, and there literally are billions of dollars available for community-based organizations to get funding and consumers to help with home heating. And it's really unprecedented. So we're going to talk about that and talk through some of the details there during the presentation or our discussion. I'm showing this image on this particular this slide here because it shows what one or two homes can do in terms of amount of smoke that can be impacted, and it demonstrates from burning wet wood or improper operation of your stove the negative impact it can have, and kind of like wildfire smoke, which many of us experienced this past year, even in the eastern part of the United States. I know out west, folks have been suffering with that. wood smoke, essentially it contains a lot of nasty chemicals and compounds, formaldehyde, benzene, and fine particles, PM 2.5 is what it's referred to, that can get deep into your lungs and cause asthma attacks, and even with some people who are vulnerable, heart attacks. So I wanted to show this picture because we don't need this to be the norm or the case where we have poor combustion due to wet wood. And I heat my house with wood. I love to heat with wood. I love the feel of heat of wood, but it has to be done the right way. And so let's move on to the Burn Wise education program that I've been working with for about 15 years. The Burn Wise education program is about educating users on how to properly use their wood burning devices. We talk about burning the right wood the right way and the right appliance, and then promoting upgrades to cleaner burning technologies. It could be going from an old uncertified wood stove to an energy efficient EPA certified wood stove, a pellet stove, or a heat pump. So we don't necessarily promote one over the other, but moving and burning to cleaner burning technologies, essentially. And burning the right wood really means dry season wood for the most part. The right way is getting your fire up to temperature, getting a good, and maintaining that, enough air to the firebox. And then the right appliance, again, could be, something that's cleaner burning technology. So that's a little bit about the Burn Wise program. In terms of the materials we have available, and we're going to be working with the Alliance for Green Heat to make these available. And during the session, I'll talk and show a little bit more and say a little bit more. But in a nutshell, we have various tip sheets, brochures, fact sheets, woodshed construction plans, which is a really popular site on our webpage with a variety of different woodsheds. We got posters and videos that also help with construction of different woodsheds, etc. I'll talk a little bit more details during our session on that. As I alluded to, the incredible opportunity that's becoming available as we speak over the next several months and really the next year. EPA and themselves has under the Environmental and Climate Justice Block Grant Program, $3 billion available for community-based organizations, not necessarily for state governments, local governments, or tribal governments, but for community-based organizations that can apply to get funding for a lot of variety of topics and issues. And so I'll speak to that program and a little bit of the details and how to eventually partner with another community-based organization or a tribe or an institute of higher learning to access the $3 billion. And then the Department of Energy's Home Energy Rebate Program. There are two rebate programs. I'll talk about that in this during our session, that has direct rebates for consumers that'll be really rolling out in 2024 for heat pumps, for example, heat pump upgrades, electrical panels, and then the IRS and federal tax credits. There's for biomass wood heaters. So that's what we'll be talking about. And thanks, and we're looking forward, hopefully, to talk with you a little later.
Thanks, Larry. All right, on to Lee Greenwood. Could you please introduce yourself? Oh, yes.
Yeah, let me see if I can share. I can. One moment. And then I'll let you guys. I think I got it. Okay. So I'll just do a very quick introduction of what I'm hoping to cover during my time. So my specific expertise is in forest pests and pathogens, and firewood is one of the leading ways that forest pests and pathogens get accidentally moved around between forests, between communities, etc. And normally I give a lot of presentations to recreationalists and groups that communicate with them, but that's not that's not this group. This group are not generally working with travelers and campers, you are generally working with people in need of firewood for home and structure keep. So I'm going to show everybody who comes to my breakout group some maps that can help you learn about forest pests and pathogens and how you can avoid moving them on firewood. A structured review of some of the regulations that you certainly would not want to accidentally break when you operate your wood bank. What firewood certification means and how you might think about it in your wood bank's experience. And then anything else you want to ask about for forest pests and wood sourcing. So this is the slide we'll probably just keep up for the duration of my talk. And this is how we will structure it. It's going to be very freeform because I'm not entirely certain what everybody wants to learn, and I'd like to tailor it to your needs. That's it. Very quick intro. I hope to see a bunch of people at my session.
Thank you, Lee. All right, we're on to Adam. Adam Taylor, could you give an introduction to your session? Do we have Adam?
Not listed in either right now.
Okay. It looks like we have lost one of our facilitators, but we can improvise a tools, equipment, and processing discussion in the webinar. So if you'd like to talk about tools, equipment, and processing, we can stay in the webinar while the other two groups follow to talk with Larry and Sean Mahoney, Larry Brockman and Sean Mahoney in their discussion, or about wood sourcing and forest health with Lee and Darian. And as far as tools and equipment, it can be any questions that you have, any best practices or good models that you've found in your experiences. And we can also talk about what kind of goals you have with equipment. What kind of new equipment might be more efficient or emit less, or be healthier for your volunteers. So we can have a conversation here about that. So please use the links that I just posted. Oh, did I just post them? Pardon me. Please hold. Please use the links that I just posted and ignore the tools, equipment, and processing. That conversation we can have in the webinar. So we'll have this conversation from now until why don't we try to come back at 2:30, between 2:30, 2:35, so we can have a wrap up takeaway message from each of these sessions. And hosts, please remember to record so that those who are not able to attend your session can listen to it later. Okay, we're right at 2:40. So we're going to take a few minutes out of our break, our little buffer here, so that we can hear a bit of what you discussed in your breakout sessions, and hope that people will trickle in. So I see Lee and Darian. Do either of you want to share what you discussed in your session?
Yeah, Lee, I don't know if you want to say it, but I can make it super quick. That basically you should be aware of all of the legalities around moving firewood, but do not despair, because Lee and don'tmovefirewood.org has a lot of information, and they have a map, and it's easy to get to, easy to recognize.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's perfect, Darian. The only thing I would add is that the rules are extremely specific to where you are. So the biggest thing that I can offer to everyone in this group is to please use our map and really orient yourself to your region, because you may have very little that you need to keep in mind, or you might be in a region that's really important to maintain safer forest pest practices. So do your homework on that. We're here to help you, and you can make it work.
Thank you so much. Yeah, there was so much interest in that topic, and for very good reason. So as people trickle in, we're hoping to hear a little wrap up takeaway messages from our topical discussions. So we'll wait for Larry Brockman. Oh, Adam, I see we've got Adam Taylor. Adam, would you mind giving us a few takeaway messages from your discussion about tools and equipment?
Yeah, and I'll begin by apologizing for being a bad host. I failed to do the record function. It was clearly communicated to me, and I failed to do that. But we had a fairly substantial group, including a lot of processors. The one main takeaway that I think would be useful information is that with the thousands of options of processing and handling technology, it would be nice if people who have purchased and used these various bits of equipment could put a list together of what they use and whether they like it or don't like it, or have some tips about their experience using it. So that was the suggestion that was made: compile that list and then redistribute it to it. But it was a conversation that could have gone on for a long time about some splitters that are cheap to buy and don't last. Intersections between degree of mechanization and safety issues. So sort of some equipment is reserved for the trained users, including chainsaws, but certainly some of the processing and handling equipment, being reserved for the trained people. A note that, of course, maintenance should be budgeted for. It's not, something that is optional. It's, firewood break-in is terribly difficult on equipment, and so you need to spend a lot of time, and it can be a challenge to get the proper maintenance taking place. There was a lot of different equipment being used, reflecting differences in scale, but also in the way that someone will donate a piece of equipment and then other equipment will become necessary. So in addition to that variety, there's a lot of variety in the quality of the wood coming in, and there needs to be a correspondence between the big old gnarly yard trees that requires a certain kind of equipment, whereas some of the nice firewood processors, which are very high production, may not be able to handle some of the ugly wood that might get donated, that sort of thing. So now those are just a few notes that I took, but enjoyed talking with the group. And man, I'm really fired up about all this wood bank stuff. I just didn't know, even so close to me here in Tennessee, there's so much going on.
Wonderful to hear. Wonderful to hear. Thank you. I appreciate that.
One more point. I'm sorry. I would be remiss in my experience as the wood products person. It's all about moisture content, everything that I do. So I did ask about that. And one of the participants had a nice suggestion of considering the inventory. Most people aren't going to have the capacity to invest in a drying piece of equipment, but the first stuff that gets split in the spring, try and deliver that first when you start delivering in the fall, and give the other material a chance to dry out in the meantime.
Nice. Yeah. It's a good transition. Equipment is never far from strategy and systems. So that makes sense that was part of your conversation. And that is a perfect segue. Unfortunately, we don't have Larry and Sean yet, I don't think. They're just having too much fun in their discussion, so we'll get them back during the break, I hope. But
I was in that session and I made it back.
Oh, you did.
I'm
Will you
gonna
give us
send-
a few notes, Jessica, on what the discussion was about before we break?
Yeah, the number one take home is that Larry is an absolute resource and knows of so many programs, so many educational items that can be shared with clients. And so if you didn't go to Larry's session, we'll try to get folks access to his slides and his contact information. And there's a lot out there. So that's the take home. Larry has a lot of resources to share.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I guess we have some of nearly the whole group back at this point. So before we go to break, as we know, this is the moment of excitement. We have another prize to give out. So with my random number generator, we are going to figure out who will go home with a beautiful moisture meter. Speaking of moisture and firewood. And it will be Kevin Brady from Oregon. Congratulations. So we will take a quick break. Please stretch, walk away from the computer for a couple of minutes, and we'll try to be back here in about, I'm sorry, break is short, 2 minutes for our last session with wood banks. We'll see you in a couple.
Lisa.
Hi there, Larry.
I failed.
Oh, no.
I forgot to hit record.
Oh, that's all right. That's all
That's-
right.
I can't believe it. Do you know where Sean ended up?
Let me see if he's on here.
And
yep, he should be here.
Larry, you make me feel better. I forgot to record also. So.
It's
okay.
It's hard to think of everything at once. I absolutely appreciate it. I appreciate your
All right. Well, anyway, that was a bummer. He says I never made it over.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Is it Sean Mahoney or a different Sean?
Yes, it was. Yeah, there were a couple of folks who had trouble getting into your session, Larry. I apologize for that.
Well, I'm wondering if there was a time where I didn't pay attention to the admit.
I see.
Because everybody showed up and there were a bunch of them. I hit admit, and then started talking. I looked up and there were 2 people sitting there, so I admitted them. So they may have said, "Damn, I'm not going to wait another minute. I'm going to someplace else." I hope to God that wasn't the case for Sean.
Okay.
Well, Sean was an active participant over in my group, so I'm glad that he wasn't able to get into yours, Larry.
All right.
There you go.
Sean Mahoney is an attendee.
Yes, he made it back here, so I'm glad. Thank you both for hosting those discussions. I'm sure they were great, even with frustrations. I look forward to hearing those recordings. So with that, we're at 2:51 here. I think we'll call everybody back from break. I'm really glad that you all got a chance to stretch, touch your toes, reach toward your toes. And I'm gonna pass it off to Clarice Hart, who's going to lead off this next session with 3 wood banks. So Clarice, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm so excited. So I'm Clarice Hart, and I work at Harvard Forest. I work with the little municipal wood bank that Jordan O'Connor represented earlier today in Petersham, Massachusetts. In 2014, we started our wood bank, and we've been scaling up little by little since then. And so I'm really excited about this particular conversation, which is about scaling up. It's about longevity. It's about kind of leadership transitions and how to keep it going over time. We have three speakers, Charlie Lewis, Donovan Spitzman, and David Andrew, who each represent different geographies and kind of different perspectives on these issues. And I'll also say that we chose these folks for a very particular reason. I did an interview project interviewing dozens of wood banks back in 2016. And so I got to really see the range of how people do things. And so I hope that we'll have some interesting comments from folks. Let's see. So I'm going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves, and I'm assuming they've each been sort of promoted to be able to speak whenever they want to. Is that right?
If not, I'll jump right on it.
Okay, great. So I just put in the chat for my panelists. If you could introduce yourselves one at a time, we'll start with Charlie. Introduce yourself and your wood bank, where it is, and tell us how long your wood bank has been running, how many staff and volunteers, you can just ballpark this, you have each year. So are we talking about 10 or are we talking about 100? And about what your working budget is. And that'll help us to understand kind of where we're starting from with the questions that I have. And then you guys, definitely everyone on the session, if you could chime in with questions on the Q&A or in the chat, that'd be great. So Charlie, are you able to speak?
Yeah.
Okay,
Good morning
awesome.
from Hopi Land, Arizona. My name is Charleston Lewis. Everybody knows me out here, Charlie. We are in the northeastern part of Arizona. We are called Picanivi Wood Haulers, a grassroots organization. We started out back in probably 2000 or so. That it became hauling for our families, of course, for the winter, and it slowly grew to where we had excess amounts of loads that people were noticing, so they started purchasing from us. So it became the family business side of it, and come now to this year, in collaboration with National Forest Foundation, the Forest Service, that we're learning about the charitable side of this work. I did volunteer with Chase for Che, other organizations that were around here in the Flagstaff area. We are located probably like 2.5 hours, if not 2 hours from Flagstaff, northeast of there. So our trips to get wood are that long. The round trips like 4 hours, 5 hours at times. We've traveled to like Yarnell Valley, even into New Mexico, Rama, to get wood and private properties. So because the forest, wasn't open yet, so that's how we got to start harvesting early in the season. And I do have like a PowerPoint I wanted to share when it comes time, but I just want to say thank you, for having us, being a part of this, being my first year in the charitable side of it. We have a crew that isn't very consistent. I have my nephews, my brothers, my daughter that are in this wood hauling, but they're all going out and doing their own parts too to make more income. As you know, out on Hopi, that the jobs aren't very much out here. So I try to help individuals to get a little employment or a little change in their pocket, as they say. I do have a few of the workers here that are certified S212, and just to they know the safety, everything about the chainsaw, which is good, so I have to really teach that part of it. As far as the work to keep this going is from the profitable side, because we had to sell wood to make this thing work. And coming through these years, I don't know how we survive doing all this. So now we are trying to get into the charitable side, working toward a 501c3 and try to get grants going, as well as the LLC part of the business. It is rough, it is tough, but for some reason we like doing this work. the felling, the bucking, the splitting, the delivering, interacting with the public, the elders. That's what it's all about too. Talking with them and what the needs are and how we can improve, especially coming in from the charitable side of it. As I say, there's never enough wood because we do come from an area where there are very few trees and it's been over harvested since the coal mine had closed. So we're going a lot further to get this the wood harvested and brought home. With that, again, my name is Charlie Lewis. I am from the reservation on Hopi Reservation. Hopi table people we work for.
So to start here.
I'm nervous. This is my first time ever doing something like this, so bear with me and we'll get through it. Kokwa, thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much, Charlie. Should we do, let's see, who should we do next? Donovan, are you ready?
Sure.
Cool.
Thanks, Charlie. I'm with you, man. This is, I think, the second time I've actually done this. Me and technology are distant friends, but I don't know, doing the best I can. Our wood bank, I think this will be our 4th season. So we just got started from an idea. We have a local organization called Neighbors Helping Neighbors, who essentially is here in our remote community for emergency needs, and they give away firewood every year. And we got to talking to one of their board members and found out how much they were spending. And from that, we actually just started a local business to be able to provide some more jobs locally, and service ourselves. We're about 15 miles down a dead end road that's 50 miles from the next town. So we're a little isolated. There's about 1,200 of us out here. Most of our wood comes from loggers in the region that we're able to buy truckloads of logs from them. We have some local arborists that drop off things to us that they can't deal with. I've heard people talk about those 40-inch rounds, and 40-inch rounds of cottonwood weigh like 400 pounds. They're enormous. But we take them because we can leave them sit. We also have a mitigation crew from our fire department here locally because we are a wildland urban interface. For those of you that are in the forestry world, I believe is what the connotation is for where we exist. So we get a lot of mitigation out of the forest interface that we have to try to protect our community from. Let's see. So, and essentially what we're doing is operating a no-profit model. I don't really like nonprofit. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a big pain in the butt. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not a great paperwork guy. And so I'm just focusing on a no-profit model where all of our profits get essentially stored back into inventory for future wood bank issues. We're doing the same thing Charlie's doing, where we have a firewood business where we sell firewood. The profit from that firewood actually pays for the wood bank. And it seems to be an operating model, and it works pretty good for us right now. We're only selling about 35 or 40 cords a year right now because that's what our supply will allow. And we give away another 6 or 8 to 10 to the community. Let's see. So I did hear in the breakout session that I was in where someone was talking about the enormous amount of site material that builds up, sawdust and wood chips and just stuff. It's unreal. What we've chosen to do, what we've chosen to do is actually partner with a local biomass gasification project, which I'm part of, for the larger pieces and chunks that just need to go away. And then we also have another group in our community that has started a soil amendment project. And so we're working with them to actually clean up our site and take away all of our materials. Half of it goes, all the sawdust goes off the soil amendments, all the chips and all the miscellaneous go off to the biomass gasification project. That project is powering a local recycling program. Hopefully that helps our economics in the long term. We'll see how that all plays out. It's just kind of getting started. We do an annual Firewood Fiesta that does the education, gets community involvement. It's a big potluck, music. We do a wood splitting contest, and that's become kind of fun. The boys get into it, and there's a lot of razzing that goes on throughout the day. And at a great surprise, the kids have gotten involved, and they have gotten incredibly active about splitting wood on our Fiesta Day. It's amazing. We have kids that split almost as much wood as the adults. It's pretty entertaining. And then our project, basically, we have now a source of a little bit of labor for people who need something pseudo consistent, but mostly it's for the folks that we have traveling through. We get a lot of hippies. We get a lot of people coming down the dead end road for spiritual retreats and whatever, and their car breaks down. They don't have resources. They get here and get stuck. Our Vortex will do that. And so it gives us a chance as a community, so no one can actually be sitting in town going, please give me money. There's no work. Because we have work. You can rake up sawdust. We have work. No more excuses. That's about it.
Thanks, Donovan. David, do you want to introduce yourself and your wood bank?
Sure. I'm David Andrew. Located in Eastie, for the Tennessee, Asheville, North Carolina, Bristol, Virginia. We are about an hour from each of those in the upper corner of East Tennessee. Our ministry, our wood bank, started in 2008. A small group of men decided to do something for the community to help, and they began processing and giving away firewood. That first year, they gave away about 75 pickup loads. I don't know how you translate that to cords. I would imagine, I don't know, 30 cords maybe. Can you haul a half a cord in a pickup? So that has grown from 2008, 75 cords, to the past 3 years, we've been 16 to 18. Let me back up. Let's say 700 to 900 cords. 700 to 900 dump trailers is what we deliver using tandem axle dump trailers, 6x10s and 6x12s. We've got 5 dump trailers, so that's how we provide deliveries. So yeah, that's who we are and what we do.
And how many volunteers would you say you have, or staff?
So we have no paid staff. We're a 501c3. It's a completely volunteer run organization. Nobody gets paid for anything, but we have a group of retirees that works Monday through Saturday. Everybody doesn't work every day, but some people work. There's somebody there almost every day. So that small group is probably 12 to 15 strong. Then we have other volunteers that are regular on Saturdays because they're younger and they still have jobs and families. So any given Saturday, we could have as many as 25 to 30 working. And then we also add to those numbers with community service volunteers that will show up and just perform their community service hours. We may see them for 4 hours or 8 hours or 30 hours, whatever their need is to get their community service hours. And that can be 2 types of community service hours. The local high schools requires, and the local small college requires some community service hours for their students. So we will see those from time to time. And then through the local judicial system, people that get out on probation and stuff, many times will have community service requirements. So we will see those folks also.
That's great. Thank you for that overview. Okay, Charlie, are you ready with your slides? Are you feeling good?
Okay, here
Okay,
we
yeah.
go. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. To the
All right. Which one do I
right here.
just enter?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like I said, I'm fairly new to all this webinar and meeting new people and collaborating with officials. The coal mine again, closed back a few years ago, and the this the primary source of heating for people out this way. Of course, you have to travel 3 in the morning or so to get in line, along with the neighboring tribe, the Navajo, to load up a truckload of coal to bring back home. Um, we come from the reservation where the mesas and plateaus, the homes are built. As you see in the background, there's no wood out this way as much. So this is Sungopavi, the bottom right where I am from, leads into the plaza there. The community, we try to help. We made several deliveries to them so they can be part of the distributions to the families over here in Shimopavi. At one point, we were delivering to the elders a cord of wood. So I don't know how many we did with the village, but we are still taking the loads to the village community. Here's the little crew that we have that's out there. This was in very Heart Ranch, south of or southeast of Flagstaff, which is like 2 hours from here, and a drive into this site is like an hour due to all the bumpy road and just trying to get there. Of course, you see we don't have the conveyors of every other food banks that have. It's all manual work. At night we come home, unload. Again, it's a 2 hour drive, 3 hours when you have the load to. You're not going so fast. The Dove Chapel we started probably like about 3 or 4 months ago, just to be in collaboration with the National Forest Foundation. They wanted this restoration beautification done to have the view of the mountain, back in the background. My family members, they came out and helped with the slash piles that were made. Of course, I get the youth involved and just show them, what work is. There's my mom, our greatest supporter of all the projects that we do out here. Wood for Life, we got the 16, or first 16 was delivered to us through the National Forest Foundation. This one we did 127 trucks that were delivered, and I put away, I believe, like 40 cords for the middle, maybe like winter, December or so. So that will be available in case there's not any wood available at that time. But in the background, you can see the carport that Alliance for Green Heat provided for us. So that's where I put the 40 cords. And this is a great, awesome group of people that help with our distribution. The organizations that help us along the way. Tisquat Okalto from village of Tewa, the Hopi Relief, the Hopi Foundation, my sister and my mom, Black Mesa Trust, and the Violence Program, Veterinary Service. There's my other moms. There's Virginia, Pat, and my sister, Darlene Wong. We try to have the local vendors be involved with us just to help promote their small business as well. They provide drinks for the volunteers. Here's one bear stand, one a concession. Of course, Spider Grill. This guy's a famous guy out here. He's done a lot of volunteer work with different organizations, and I'm very proud and happy that he's out there doing this work. Our distribution, we had, of course, the volunteers. This was the 120 cores that was delivered to us from the National Forest Foundation. See the line that in and get the pickup. The hard part of it is, or the bad part, I guess, is that people that don't have the vehicles do not receive the wood. So that's where we are trying to come in to raise funding to do that kind of work, so they can be a part of the wood distributions. The villages north from here, probably about 15 miles, and back to the east of us, probably even 20, 25, 30 miles, that we try to reach. It is hard to try to get everyone. We want everyone to have, as they say, piece of the pie, which is piece of the wood. After a whole distribution was done, this is what the site looked like. Our volunteers, it was a very good day to get everyone, or as much as we could, get served. Again, we thank everybody for everybody's work that day. Going around the villages, I see wood, that's are stacked out there, which makes me happy to know that they'll have some kind of comfort come the cold season. Uh, if as you can see, the homes in the background, there's not electricity that runs to them where they can run heaters. Some have the heaters, some have the propane stove, the
cooking.
This again, distributions are made in Palaka. One thing is that we don't know run into this part of it to where we're making deliveries while it's snowing. That's why we want to try to get people educated about getting it together sooner rather than later. We did fall into the storm at one time, and it was pretty scary coming home. It took us another 2 hours just to get back during that time. Another service, we try to provide for the people out here is the wood splitting, and we have a few of them again that one we purchased, and then the other two were given to us from Alliance for Green Heat, which we appreciate and gets a lot of the work done a lot easier. Alliance for Green Heat, this is what they provided for us to store the wood. It's under construction, and this is the crew right here who are out there as right now cutting up, these the cedar here. In the background, we do have the ponderosa pine, and a little further back, we have the pinon pine, and underneath the trailer there, we have the cedar as well. But again, it's challenging for us as a grassroots organization to get this wood out to the public, because it's just the funding, and of course our own vehicles that we use. We have the two trucks, 2500 and F250, the 16-foot hydraulic dump, and 18-foot flatbed that we use to haul the wood. Again, we travel. I had the miles here, but it's like about on average 400 miles a round trip to get the wood back out here. And of course, we still some will have to buck up, and then some will have to let it cure, because learning about moisture content in the wood. So we try to get it down to the 18%, which is, required at 5% to 18%. So it is, you can get the wood out of it. There's my two friends there. These guys are hard workers too, but it says it all, we love our work and what we are doing out here. If there, if you have any questions, just ask, and I'll answer to the best of my ability, my knowledge that I have. But the other part of it too is the wood is used for the cooking too. The cedar is the more preferable wood for the ovens, the bread ovens that they make so many loaves in there. And then of course the cook homes. Some people don't have the electricity, so they don't have the gas stoves that but again, it's just it's hard, because you want to have everybody a few, if not several cords of wood. We're only up to probably like 200 cords of wood, and we've been doing this all year. Again, thanks to the National Forest, that we received that 114 cords that at least help to can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, just to let you know that we are doing our best out here to get the wood to the people. And bringing it in from miles and miles and hours of driving. I don't know why I'm doing this, but I guess we all like the work being outdoors and just meeting new people like you guys, making it happen is what I say too. Let's make it happen. Let's get it done and let everybody be okay for the winter. But like I said, if you have any questions, I'm here to answer. Thank you very much, Kokwa.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. It's so important to be able to see pictures. And I think you expressed so well the heart that drives all of us. And I don't know that we can really put it into words, but we're here to get it done. Right. So thank you. Thank you for all your work and for sharing your piece. So obviously we've got, yeah, in the chat, it says, Charlie, you need larger trucks and you are amazing. I think we all agree with that. So I have, as people are thinking about what their questions are, I have a question for all of you, which is, there's always behind a wood bank, there's always like a champion or a group of people whose effort, vision, heart is really kind of driving it forward. And some of these programs that you guys are running have been going now for a couple of decades. So how do you think about or prepare for transitions in leadership? Have you managed a transition? Why don't we start with Donovan?
Hello. Being new, we haven't actually had to really do experience that at this point. There's a small group of us. It sounds like everybody else is in the same boat where we just make it happen. And we have the luxury of billable hours. So you don't have to make it happen at hurt while you're essentially taking away from yourself or your family, which is kind of nice. I really have nothing. We're working on that. I'm hoping to learn right now.
Yeah, it's an important thing to have in the back of your mind. We went through.
It's going to have to happen sooner than later.
David, what about you guys? Oh, you're muted, friend. Can we unmute so we can hear you?
Now?
Perfect.
Okay. So we are a 501c3. We organized as a 501c3 in 2010, even though the ministry started a couple of years earlier. But as a 501c3, we have a board of directors and we have officers. We have had one transition as far as the president goes. We had a fellow that was the president until 2014 when his dad became very sick with cancer, and he asked me if I would take it off of his shoulders, which I did. And I'm perfectly fine with it. Every year we do re-election of officers, and everybody says, "Well, you do it one more year," and I'm happy to. So as long as they want me to continue, I will. But I have no doubt that within our board and our other officers and our other volunteers, that when the time comes and we need somebody else to step in, that will happen. I did want to talk, though, to the first two topics that we were supposed to address, and that's sustainability and scaling up. And basically what I want to say is get in front of every group that you can and tell your story. Explain the need in your community. Explain the story of the young mother with 4 daughters under the age of 13 whose husband left her and whose heat pump was out, and they've had no heat in their mobile home for a month. Tell them about the 4th grade boy that told his teacher, "I'd like to have your walking stick because I could break it up and burn it tonight and help my mother and my sister stay warm." So tell those stories to as many people as you can. And when I say as many people, I'm talking about Sunday school classes, church groups, civic clubs, the Exchange Club, the Rotary Club, the Kiwanis, the Newcomers Club. All of those clubs are looking for a monthly program. Be that program for a month. Go in and tell them what you're doing and what the need is in your community, and that you need money and you need volunteers. And you will be surprised at how many people are going to say, I never knew that we had people here that had that kind of a need, and I'm willing to help. I cannot split wood. I can help you deliver it maybe, but I can write you a check for $100. That's how we have done what we're doing. We've gotten all of our volunteers that way. Our funding comes from the community. Another thing that we've done over the years is on Saturdays when we have our big volunteer days, we've partnered with a bunch of churches, and the ladies will come in and fix a lunch, and we'll go to that church and have lunch. Now, every church doesn't fix lunch every Saturday, but on a rotating basis, any of those churches might provide a meal for us 4 or 5 times through the winter months, October through April. So get the community involved, tell the story, get the local newspaper to run your story, a couple times during the winter. Local television stations, they want to do community interest stories. And they'll run a story about how a small group of volunteers is making a difference in the community. So those are just some ideas, and that is how we have sustained what we're doing, and that's how we've been able to scale up from where we started to where we are now, is tell your story.
That's really great wisdom. Thank you for that, David. Charlie, is there a way that you have, speaking of like scaling up and thinking about, sharing stories, is there a way that you've identified almost like invisible need in your community? I mean, I see a line of trucks, people show up, they know that they have need, and they see what the help is. But are there ever elders or people that have need and you got to sort of like bring them in and help them understand what's available? And this is a question for all of you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we do have the individuals that are handicapped, and we try to reach out to them, um, you know, but it's again, it takes. We do have the wood here, but it's going back and forth, and then getting our laborers or helpers to load. We hardly do get volunteers, so a lot of it is compensation to the workers out here. We do want to help as many people as we can. Or the one thing that when my grandmother was still here with us, we had the fire going all year, and she would sit in front of the stove, even in the middle of summer. So that kind of like got me to thinking like we need more wood all year round for the older folks out here. But we just try to again do the best that we can to get as much as we can out here, and being on a larger scale now, it is kind of not kind of. I mean, it is hard because we don't have that funding, and I'm glad that Denise here is doing the grant writing for us and trying to seek out these fundings that we can apply for. Um, Again, with like some of them, they only ask or want you to do specific things with the funding, but out here we would like to get more compensation so we can grow, we can get bigger, more employment for the youth. We still want to have the high school National Honor Society come out, do some volunteer work or whomever, but it's just gonna always be tough until we actually get this thing rolling. They're telling me that when you're getting started, it takes about 4 or 5 years before everything settles down and everything's kind of going in gears. So like I said, it's my first time in the charitable side of it, and then on the other side, the for-profit side of it, it's still all work, and we still have to get all this of the wood out here. And the way we get our news out is just by word of mouth too. Not everybody has Facebook out here. Not everybody has the phones and the technology, computers. Even I don't have a laptop. Hopefully one day I'll end up with one. But it's just that we try to let one another know. A lot of the posters go up in the local stores around here to let people know things are going on out here. But we just try to, like I said, do our best to get this wood out to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for kind of reminding us that cold season isn't just in the winter, right? Depending on who you are, you might need a fire all year round, all the time. Donovan, how have you guys thought about scaling up, even being new, and how have you identified need?
Our biggest thing about scaling up right now is that we need a truck. And so we're striving to get a vehicle so that we can stop using my truck for everything we do. And other than that, to be honest with you, we have the capacity between our labor force and our volunteers and the other things that we do to handle essentially what our business model has us set up for, which is about 75 or 80 cords a year for sale and another 10 to 15 cords that we're able to give away. And that it's a cash flowing business model. If we can get some subsidies through the soil amendments and the gasification project, even if it's just site cleanup, honestly, we're in a pretty good shape. We're just kind of solid with where we are. I'm not sure that actually answered your question.
No, that's great.
Yeah, because we're so isolated and it's just us at a certain point. It's kind of like Charlie. There's only so many.
Right.
Like our community probably buys, our guess is our community buys around 1,000 cords of wood a year. And our goal is to have somewhere just under 10% of that. And that funds all of the wood that our Neighbors Helping Neighbors project needs. And that's perfect.
All right. So we have just a couple of minutes left, or like 1 minute left. So I'm going to ask you guys to each make a final, whatever you would like to share with us. That's a little high stakes, but we're going to start with David. What's a message that you would like to share with your wood bank friends here?
So one thing that I have not mentioned is how people get to us, how they find us, or how they receive the wood from us. We partner with the local food bank, and they do all the qualification, and it's income based. So anybody that asks us for firewood, we refer them to the food bank. And if the food bank qualifies them, then we will take the firewood to them. So we just don't hand it out to anybody that asks us, because we know that there are people that could be getting their own firewood, but they look at us and say, oh, there's free wood over there. We'll just get some of that. But we want to make sure there's an income-based need for the wood that we give away. And just get out and tell your story. The community will support you.
Thank you. That's great wisdom. Charlie, final words?
I have many words, but again, the word that we're sharing with you guys is namit nangwa. Namit nangwa, is helping another one out or helping each other's out. And yeah, I wish we could all come out and do this work where we help one another. With this grassroots organization, namit nangwa, we're helping the individuals, the youth, to get some kind of income. Namit nangwa, we're helping this wood get out to the people, helping them, and just like our logo, warmth for Hopi and Tewa, and that's this whole thing about Namit Nangwa is helping one another and sharing this work with one another. One thing I would like to see is like somebody come in, pick up a load of wood and take it to someone that don't have a vehicle or that is in need, and then they come back and pick up a load for themselves. That's that part of Namit Nangwa that I am, hopefully down the road we'll get that going. Because again, we can't fund every trip, that's 20, 30 miles away from here, round trip. We would like to, but at the same time, it is rough. And recently, again, we're doing a raffle right now to raise money to get this wood out to the people, and just keep it rolling. I want to say thank you to David and Donovan, for the work that you guys are doing out there, because it is hard, it is tough, but again, it's what we like doing. I am 52, 53 years old, and I like being out in the woods and just keep myself going. I am a jeweler first, and I kind of quit that after sobriety came in. So now this is my way of giving back to my community, through my sobriety and wanting to do work for them. With that, I appreciate you guys for selecting me to be part of this panel. Again, David and Donovan, thank you for the work that you guys are doing out there as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Kokwa. Warm for hope and Tewa. Kokwa.
Hey, Charlie, this is David. I'm going to jump in here. I noticed that line of trucks that were picking up from you.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask every single one of those drivers, hey, do you have time to take a load to somebody down the road? Ask those people if they will.
Yeah, this thought was after, after seeing that they were just taking for their own families. So now we are trying to get that word out to see if they can come in and pick up, and then they take one for themselves. So these ideas are brewing. I'm full of ideas. I want things to happen, but it takes time for things to work its way through to make it happen, to make it.
I think you have the hardest job of all of us, because you do not have wood available to you in a close proximity.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing what you're doing.
Yeah. Share my story with the people, so maybe we can get a truck and trailer out this way. Thank you, Kokwa. Thank you.
Right. I like that idea. Donovan, do you have last words for us?
I will say, Charlie, the thing we're working on, because we're with you, we have a lot of people who are, we've actually had a guy come out and just start helping himself to our wood when we weren't there late at night. And it's rough sometimes. So what we're working on is some type of a token or a ticket or some type of a ribbon to then throw an annual potluck party that everyone participates in. And then those folks get some type of a recognition for helping out or whatever weird thing we can come up with. But we're striving to do a similar thing where we're getting the people who are capable and have the resources to help us out, actually actively not only helping themselves, but helping out the other community members, especially our elders that just need it.
I know our bank here is like pretty open, and I'm very fortunate nobody really has done anything like that, so we are hopefully try to get it out so they're not doing anything like that. We are very trusting people, and we just want to again do our best and do what we can for the people, and it's tough, but we're very fortunate like that happened out here.
He thought he was helping us out by just taking care of his own needs.
Yeah.
Not realizing we actually have a tracking mechanism and some other stuff we have to deal with.
Hey, we'll keep in touch, bro.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you for all you're doing. Because I'm with David. You're doing amazing stuff in an area with limited resources.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all so much. And there are people asking in the chat if there's a way to donate. It looks like there's an answer. So
let's go quiet. Thank you. We'll share that in the I guess in the chat.
Is that possible?
Is that possible?
Sure.
Okay, we will.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing your wisdom. And Elisa, I'm going to turn it back to you, or maybe Darian.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful session. Thank you, Clarice. And thank you, and Charlie and Andrew and Donovan. Oh, shoot. Sorry. David, Andrew. Pardon me, David. So we're going to turn it over to John and Darian from Alliance for Green Heat. And they are going to introduce themselves and a bit of what they're going to talk about.
Can we go ahead
John
and
Darian.
share?
Hello, we've got one.
Great. I'll
Thanks,
share
Darian.
now. Sorry, John, would you like me to share or you?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and share?
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay, well, first of all, I want to say that's a hell of a panel to follow. That was really inspiring, and this is going to be a little more nuts and bolts than what we've been hearing today. I also know it's the end of a long day. It's really been a wonderful summit, so we'll try to keep this short. I just want to give a quick intro of Alliance for Green Heat. Just that we're a small nonprofit. We're really fortunate that the Forest Service has entrusted us to give away these funds. I should mention it came from a very generous staff person on the Hill that actually told the Forest Service that they had to use $8 million for firewood banks. And that's sometimes how things work in Washington. So one thing we can do is to go back to that staff and that committee and make sure that they give more money. This is a 5-year program. So anyway, so we quick intro. I wanted you, and especially we have 4 staff who you see at the bottom. You've been hearing from Darian. Lilith just got hired like yesterday, and so hopefully you'll be getting to know her. She's a very talented young woman. But I particularly want to talk about Pam, because Pam, maybe most of you know her because she's the one who processes the applications for funding. And she couldn't speak today, but anyone that applies for a grant this year, you'll be getting a call from her, and she will help you get everything done. Okay, next slide. So yeah, the goals that we have giving out this money is basically, I mean, the first thing we have to do is faithfully execute the contract with the Forest Service. And in doing so, we've really tried to keep the barriers to funding low. We don't want to create a lot of paperwork, a lot of headaches, but we do need to, gather some info. And I like to joke that this is one of the least competitive grants you'll ever apply for, because if you are a firewood bank, you're eligible, and there's 99% chance you'll be approved. And we do our best to work with everyone to, if the application is not all together, it's no problem. We work with you to get it together until it's in shape for us to send the money. But overall, our goals, first of all, we really need to learn more, because, I've been watching firewood banks for years and years, but God, I think I've learned more today than I have in the last few years, because it's just hearing from all of you, and it's just so many different models out there and different needs that it's really important to kind of keep a wide perspective on everything. And then another goal, we really want to strengthen long-term sustainability, not just give funding that'll last for 1 year. Third, we want to help improve safety practices. A lot of you are doing a great job, and I think a lot of you have said that you do want to figure out how to improve safety practices. So we hope we can add some value there. We'd love to see as many of you expand as possible. I know a lot of you are tapped out based on the number of your volunteers, the source of your wood. So that's but of course, helping more people in more homes is what all of us want to do. And then we also want to add some value in terms of promoting better seasoning of wood and just making sure everyone knows the importance of that, and helping convey that to people who use the wood. It's kind of a basic intuition that green wood doesn't burn well, but it's still, education is still really important. And seasoning that wood and getting it seasoned, whether it's on your own lot or in the homes you deliver to, is so important. And lastly is we want to pivot more to help safety practices and conditions in the homes you serve. So next slide. So this is something we're going to start doing this year, and we would like to identify firewood banks that want to take a next step and really work more with the homes that you deliver wood to. Because there are ways to get stoves inspected and repair, get chimneys inspected and cleaned. And a lot of this is through signing up for free energy audits. If you're low income, you can get a free energy audit, and that energy audit should lead to your stove getting inspected, repaired, and maybe even replaced at no cost. And this is work that Lilith, the woman who we just hired, is going to be doing. So hopefully, if you do want to participate in this a new program, let us know, and she'll be in touch with you. Next slide. Yeah, and then this is something Larry touched on, but there may be other grants that you may be eligible for, and we would love to help facilitate that, and we'll work with Larry to help get that info out to see if there are additional funding sources. And some of you may have the capacity, or maybe bundled together, we could all get money that'll help trade out wood stoves and get rid of those ancient wood stoves that I know all of you probably serve households that have stoves that are just simply too old and not safe. And we'd love to figure out how some of this federal funding could go to help folks get new stoves, or maybe even get rid of a stove and get a heat pump. That's really up to each household. Okay, and now I'm going to turn it over to Darian.
Yep.
He'll talk more nuts and bolts.
So I'm going to introduce y'all to the 3 different types of applications, which is a little bit different than we did last year. And the first one are renewal grants. So these are for the firewood banks that we funded 2022, 2023, and that also distribute at least 100 plus cords. And you're eligible for up to 20,000, which is a difference from last year. And the application is pretty much similar. Pretty much the same. It's the same platform as well. There are a couple of new additions. We do need a secondary contact. That's just helpful if we want to kind of follow up with someone on reporting. And you also must have a moisture meter, or you have to buy one with the funds. The second one is a new applicant grant. So this is everyone that has an established firewood bank that we've never funded before. And that's up to 15,000 for firewood banks giving away less than 100 cords, and up to 20,000 for firewood banks giving away more than 100. And if you've never done this before, it could be a little overwhelming. You first kind of have to describe your organizational structure in the form. You do need to have a liability waiver required, but we have a template. So you just kind of put in your firewood bank. You need to provide the number of homes served, number of cords distributed, also kind of describing the system for seasoning wood, and share what kind of equipment you already have in your possession. A UEI is a big one. You can have one yourself, or it can also come from your fiscal sponsor. And you also need a grant request budget. We have another template, so no worries. And we love to have images of your firewood bank. We like to put them up on our website just to say, here's who we're funding, and it also helps to network between y'all. And the third one, which we're very excited about, is a startup grant. And this is for people who have not distributed before, and you want to officially establish a firewood bank, and that you're also planning on distributing at least 5 cords in the upcoming heating season. And this is for up to 10,000. Of course, this is all based on kind of your capacity and the need in your community. And in terms of what to expect there, it is the same as new applicants, so everything I said for the last one, but also a more in-depth description of your mission and your community. Describe a little bit more about your outreach plan. So that can be anything from, this is where we're going to put up flyers, or these are social media outlets that will be displaying, come get wood, that kind of thing. And also an outline of a volunteer safety plan. And some frequently asked questions that we get a lot, like I said, unique identity identifier, UEIs. You can use your fiscal sponsors. The moisture meter required. If you don't have one, you got to purchase one. And for partnerships, if private businesses would like to apply, you kind of need the community partner. You need to have a support letter, and that's just to kind of have a checks and balances over the funding and give us a little bit more background on your community. And for eligible expenses, yes, you can buy logs. Yes, you can buy used equipment. But the big deal, which we know is kind of a bummer, singular items cannot be over 5,000. This is due to a lot of paperwork, but trust me, you want to keep it under 5,000. In terms of reporting requirements, this is huge. 2-week interim reports for everyone. So within 2 weeks of receiving your funds, 80% of the funds need to be spent, or also order receipts are accepted. And we'll send you out a link, and basically you just fill it all out, attach your receipts, pictures of your receipts, uploads of your receipts, anything over 250. And then there will be a final report, and all of these will be communicated to you within the contract or within emails. And this just accounts for the remaining funds. And we also like to throw in a bit some of the questions of like, how did this grant impact you? How was the experience? How was your grant manager? Just so we can improve on our practices. And that's all I have for y'all. If you have any questions, throw them at us.
There are a few questions for you in the chat.
Oh, let's see here. Let me open her up. Okay. Let's see. Eileen, what about those of us who fall between the cracks? We gave less than 100 cords, but we are a viable 501c3 who's continued to serve the community. We need help. We've fulfilled other requirements of the grant. Let's see. Eileen, are you with those that are applying as a renewal, or are you someone that's never applied before?
Yeah, I'll jump in here.
Renewal. Okay.
Yeah. We're under some restrictions based on the Forest Service. And that wonderful man that you heard from in the very beginning, Brian, he also is part of a big system. They're the ones that make us get a UEI and don't allow us to give grants for things over $5,000. And they also did not want us, they wanted to see how many new banks are out there. They didn't want us to give second-year grants to smaller firewood banks. So our hands are kind of tied there, but we're hoping next year that we can, the third year, that we can go and give a second grant to groups that got it the very first year. So this is all a work in progress, and we kind of have to, work with the Forest Service to, and I think they'll learn a lot from this summit and help understand what the needs are. So stay tuned.
Yeah, and Julie asked about the submission deadline and the fact that there isn't one. It is a rolling deadline, rolling basis. The idea was actually that this is better for those firewood banks that have less capacity. Instead of having a deadline where they had to get everything together, usually for established ones, it's much easier to do that. So having it open-ended allows time for the smaller wood banks, generally speaking. But any advice for applicants on when they should generally submit by? Honestly, in terms of last year's, we had money into the next year, so it's open right now. And so John, I don't know if you have any other suggestions, but we weren't hurting for that. So yeah.
Yeah, last year it was open for a long, long time. It may go faster this year. One reason we like, if you do want money, I would just say go ahead and apply ASAP. We expect there to be money for the next month or two, but we like to see people get money early in hopes that that'll help them ramp up and prepare, get their wood processed earlier and distributed earlier so that folks may get drier wood.
And then Nancy asked, what is the reason for requiring funds to be spent within 2 weeks? I think generally we just want the money to come in and then immediately be used. We don't want it sitting anywhere, cause complications. Do you have any?
Well, again, that's a Forest Service. Technically, this is a reimbursement grant. So technically, we're supposed to be having banks buy stuff first and then reimburse them. And of course, that's impossible because firewood banks don't have that money. So we told the Forest Service that that's unworkable. And the only way we can run this small grant program is if we send the money out so that they can buy stuff. And Forest Service said, okay, we'll just do that, even though it's not technically allowed. But just make sure the banks use the money quickly and report on it so that we can stay a little closer to the reimbursement idea.
And Reba was asking more of some can logistics be paid for with the funds? Can labor? And I will say that I believe that it's gone towards labor in the past. We don't Generally, I guess, promote that only because we do want this to go towards things that can be continuously used. So more about like we want the equipment that will be used in years to come instead of things that are like being used right now and then aren't renewable. But yeah, gas, I also believe so has been in the past been funded, if that helps. Let's see.
Third year grants will be open, I think, pretty much in exactly a year from now, September 1st, 2024.
This is a good question from Rosaline, maybe, sorry. Could organizations in that category apply under renewal if they now plan to do 100 chords in the new year, John, instead of the reported last year's chord count?
Oh, we'll have to get back to you on that. And that's partially, some of these things we just have to check with Brian at Forest Service, because we'd like to be as lenient as possible. We just don't want to get his back up at all. So we'll check on that.
Yeah, and Kelly, new applicants can deliver 100 chords. Yes, there's two different, 100 plus is kind of a different category, under 100 is a different category, but you can deliver 100 plus, 100, under 100. Let's see.
Thank you so much. I think we'll have to leave it there. I apologize for cutting you off and all of the people whose questions went unanswered, but we are running out of time, which is amazing.
Alicia, can I just say that shoot us any question by email on the Firewood Bank website. Our contact is there, and we'll definitely get all those questions answered.
Awesome. Yes, and I wanted to share, I'm going to share in the chat here that on October 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern, so I apologize for putting all of these times in Eastern time, but you can calculate what that is for you. We'll have a beginning wood bank webinar. So this is focused for beginning wood banks, but we will have John and Darian as our guests at that webinar. So I look forward to you all having the chance to answer a lot more questions about the upcoming grant and everything else that you do. So before we say goodbye, you might remember that there is one more coveted item that is available for our drawing. So I hope you're all doing silent drum rolls, because the winner of the I Heart Firewood Banks mug is Reba Broyles from Utah. Congratulations, and thank you very much for attending the 2023 Firewood Bank Summit.
And so I'm going to jump in with a little wrap up, and primarily I want to thank our wonderful moderators and panelists. I learned some lessons about moderating from the moderators. I can see we tapped the right people to do that, and I really appreciate everyone's assistance with that. And our presenters, our panelists, it was great to hear your stories, and I thank you for accepting the limelight and presenting and sharing and all of that. We are also really thankful to the USDA Forest Service for the funding that they're providing to wood banks, as well as our research and outreach. And I think we also need to recognize and thank the Alliance for Green Heat for the grants program and their management of that. It's been such a great fit to have them as the wood bank grant distributor. And so I appreciate that, and that offer to accept emails and all these very detailed questions that came in the chat there. They can absolutely go to Pam and Darian after, and I'm confident that you'll get a response. I want to thank all the attendees as well, and thank you for running a wood bank and being a leader in your wood bank. I do think that one of those benefits of wood banks are communities, and you feel that when you volunteer and work with the people in your local community. But I hope that this summit led you to feel like you are also part of a national community of wood banks, and that sense of community is, even though we're virtual, that was an aspect of the experience. And we want to keep it going. And so Elisa will be following up to all of the people who registered. We've got your email, and we'll continue the conversation in a variety of ways. One of the things that would be really helpful is, Elisa, just put in the chat a Qualtrics survey. We'll email this to you as well, but if you want to click on that link and have it up as we finish it, you could fill it out right after the Zoom ends. That evaluation survey is going to help give us feedback on the kinds of outreach that you would like, and the type of facilitation of this national community. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to hand it over to Elisa to clean up anything that I did not cover, and actually wrap up and have us finish the Zoom and hit the end button. So Elisa, back to you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you again, everybody who gave their time to be here today, in whatever time zone, in whatever state, in whatever town. And I mostly want to make sure that you know that this has been recorded. So if you missed any session that you're dying to listen to, we will be sending that out. The feedback form is there. Our first webinar is October 5th for beginning wood banks, but we will have further possibilities to meet up and to exchange information. So thank you for being the beginnings of the first national network of wood banks. I appreciate everybody attending.